Putting hands together once again. I will now invite the Honorable Chair to give his welcome remarks. Sir.
I welcome to all the participants, especially Honorable Lord Chairperson, Senate Committee of Foreign Affairs. She is with regards of the Research Institute for Foreign Affairs and the panelist Honorable Sharia from the National Assembly, Honorable Central Zina Khan Saiba, Honorable Mr. Ward, Member of the European Parliament, Mr. Tim Stone, former State Committee Member of the Indian Peace Rights, Dr. Ravi Saab, Dr. Mohan, Asad Saab, my other brother from the other side of the association, and Mr. Zubin, also from IUDA. I welcome another signatory for participants of this webinar organized by the National Parliament Seminar of Kashmir and Islamabad. Yesterday, Mr. Muhammad Nawaz Sharif had inaugurated this seminar, and I hope that people who have attended this seminar will be able to understand the issue of Kashmir there. The priceless young ones who are sitting in front of me. And I hope that this will help a long way in understanding the issues, and especially today's Pakistani relations, social climate and security implications with this Kashmir issue. And now I would like to
start. Thank you, sir. So this is a panel discussion now formally takes place. It would go like this, that we will be requesting the honorable panelists to speak for 8 to 9 minutes and make a speech. Thereafter, the session will be concluded by the honorable co-chair, Sadar West Ahmed Khan Rahari, MLA and the chair, Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly of Pakistan, and then we'll take 15 minutes question answers. We understand because today's congregation, Juma congregation, would like to be taught on point. So as the Honorable Prime Minister told, that this session is titled Pakistan-India Relations, Socio-Economic and Security Implications. Once we conclude the question answer session, then we request the Honorable Prime Minister to make his final presidential address. So first of all, I will request the Honorable Mr. Sharia Khan Afridi, Member National Assembly of Pakistan. Sharia Khan Afridi is an active parliamentarian and a prominent member of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Mr. Afridi was elected as member of the National Assembly in 2013. He was also nominated as a candidate for the post of Speaker in the National Assembly. He is member of the Standing Committee on Defence Production and Petroleum and National Resources, and a very inspirational, youthful speaker. Putting hands together.
Honorable Prime Minister of the Kashmir, distinguished panelists, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. It is my utmost pleasure and privilege to speak to this august gathering today. The social, economic and security relation between India and Pakistan is far too bigger for a topic that I can touch upon in any able manner in such a short period of time. While as a Democrat it is my desire to serve the downtrodden people of Pakistan, the shadow of war haunts the future of the two countries collectively. Though I inherited the will to fight for the will of freedom, justice and equality until my last breath, I am prepared to shed my blood for the defense of my motherland or to sacrifice my life for the betterment of the people of this country. Hence, as a Democrat, my utmost desire for lasting peace
is an integral part of my political program. I am taught that the dividend of peace comes to the nation as an outcome of democracy and it yields prosperity. Yet I see the lust for power, blood and war in the eyes of my neighbors who claim to be the largest democracy on the face of the earth. Before I comment on Indo-Pak perspective, let's just give a bird's eye view to different regions of the world from the perspective of conflicts. The European nations have a history of disintegration, wars, hate, and slaughters for hundreds of years, yet we saw them integrating in the unison of the European Union. The hatred between French and Britons was transformed into the model example of bilateral relationship between France and England. The 50 independent states of North America that have seen the worst ethnic cleansing in the history of the world was transformed into the peaceful state of United States of America. The world has civilized with time, with knowledge, and with democracy. Yet two regions have only grown more wide gaps among themselves, that is the Arabian Peninsula and the Indian subcontinent. The offensive and oppressive diplomatic postures of the two states result in military tensions that results in more military spans on the cost of education, health, and livelihood. More tanks are manufactured at the cost of schools, more cannons are made at the cost of bread, and more rockets are tested at the cost of research centers. The escalation of tension will only result in more business for the military-industrial complex and more miseries for the poor of both the states where poverty line is around 50%. The poor remains deprived of bread and butter while the forces are equipped with expensive ammunition to kill the civilians in the punishment of being born on both sides of the border. To me, the rights of child remain the same at both sides of the border, regardless of his creed, caste, religion, and nationality. It is up to the politicians of the two lands to serve these children with food and clothes, or to opt to invest in the destruction of their futures with deadlier weapons. Kashmir is the lifeline of Pakistan. We cannot make a compromise on the rights of Kashmiris to live with the freedom as a democratic right. Hence, we cannot keep a lenient view of Indian atrocities on the other side of the border. I will request the leadership of India to deliberate in the possibility of peace, coexistence with Pakistan, and to understand that Pakistan cannot undone. If NAFTA and SAFTA can emerge out of the blood-filled history of American continent, why not the people of subcontinent can live with peace as they have been living for 500 years? This political scenario is threatening to undo the entire global social fabric built since the end of World War I and World War II. Terrorism and fanaticism will not succeed unless we deliberately fall into its trap. The people of subcontinent need to recognize that the races that use their name to escalate tensions and to spread the narrative of hate has to end now. Ladies and gentlemen, we as civilized nation, if we are civilized people and a civilized nation, we need to portray loud and clear to the whole world, and we are very fortunate that we have few parliamentarians from the developed world, that when it comes to the Indian narrative, that is given due importance. For example, when we talk of cross-border terrorism, the narrative was given immense importance by the developed world, and Indians were allowed to go for fencing. But when it comes to Kashmir, that commitment, which still is waiting, and the people of the entire globe is kept at arm's length for the sole reason that if you have a huge market, if you are the biggest democratic country in the world, then there are no certain rules and regulations which can be applied on that nation. And in another sense, we are conveying message to the whole world that no matter whosoever you are, if your number is less and if your role is not as important as the rest of the countries who can really dictate, then you need to pay a heavy price for the rest of your life. Ladies and gentlemen, it has to end now. And we need to convey a message. We need to convey a message loud and clear to the developed world as well message to all those who are responsible and at the helm of the affairs at the highest level that Kashmiris need to be given the importance and that commitment has to be fulfilled now. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, शायर ने क्या खूब कहा कि डूबते डूबते कश्ती को उछाला दे दो, डूबते डूबते कश्ती को उछाला दे दो, मैं नहीं कोई और साहिल पे उतर जाएगा. I guess such initiative needs to be taken at all levels. Proactive diplomatic initiative is the order of the day. At all forums, especially, we need to target universities. We need to raise our voice at all levels so that misperception about Pakistan and about Kashmiris should be finished for once and for all. I am once again very grateful for providing me an opportunity, and once again, my best wishes and my prayers are with the people of Kashmir, and I believe soon we will witness that day when Kashmiris will be able to earn their utmost desire, inshallah. Pakistan.
Next, because Honorable Senator Rubina is just on the way, so I'll take the opportunity to invite the next guest. That is Honorable Julie Ward. Let me tell you, first of all, we welcome her. Heartiest welcome from the people of Pakistan on behalf of the Parliament of Pakistan, the National Assembly, Senate, and all the provincial assemblies and the Assembly of President, AJK, and Henry Pakistan. We welcome you, ma'am. She is member of European Parliament for the North West England region for the Labour Party and was elected in 2014. She has a master's degree in education and international development from Newcastle University and graduated from an adult learning course in 2012. Ms. Ward campaigns against violence against women, organizing events for 1 billion rising. Before being elected as an MEP, she was part of an international delegation to Belfast to discuss the role of arts in peace process and ran a social enterprise. Putting our hands together to welcome Honorable Julie Ward.
Thank you very much for welcoming me here. I am amongst my family, amongst my brothers and sisters. It is, however, my first visit ever to Pakistan, and I know it won't be the last. And since I was elected in 2014, I have taken your cause to be my cause also, because when I take my responsibility as an elected representative for the Northwest of England in the European Parliament, I know that I represent many sons and daughters of Kashmir, and for that reason, I have to take this on. It is not. It would not be right for me to turn my back, to disregard the situation here. I'm going to talk to you from the perspective of being an activist and a campaigner, particularly a women's rights campaigner, but also somebody who fights for children's rights and for youth, and also as a peace activist as well. And as a committed European, I'm very proud to be here as a member of the European Parliament. I'm a passionate believer in dialogue and in us having as many platforms as possible from which to put forward and advance the causes, the just causes of social rights, social justice and peace. And we are in a particular position right now where in fact the UK may not be the best example at how to get on with one's neighbours. So I can't be here and not mention to you what I perceive to be the disaster of Brexit, which is causing our communities to fragment, to foster hate and division. So I think we might have something to learn ourselves about how to get on with our neighbours, particularly our age-old neighbours who are closest to us in France, in Germany. And I have relatives who lie in the fields of northern France, in particular a young 19-year-old member of my family who was shot down during the war. And for me, Europe is a peace project. It's why we need to continue being together as a union to remember that these things should never happen, and that dialogue, sitting around the table together, always has to be better than taking up arms against each other. And so we have in the European Union subcommittees now and meetings instead of war cabinets. I am fearful for the future, however. I am fearful for the future. And I am fearful that if we don't get things right in Europe, it's harder for us to fight the case for you here in Pakistan, in Kashmir. The European Union is one of the most powerful platforms for human rights in the world. And when I was elected, I had no idea that this was a really key part of the European Union's work. Every time we have a plenary session, we have what we call human rights urgencies. We have a human rights subcommittee, and we're able to bring to that experienced committee with experienced policy advisors. We're able to bring a whole load of different issues about human rights, about minority groups, about infringements of human rights, long-standing, but also things that are occurring now. And we are also in the business of diplomacy, international diplomacy. Our High Representative Federica Mogherini, a woman peacemaker, is always at different parts of the world, at different conflict points, having the important conversations that you need to have in order to try and build those bridges and try and diffuse violence as it erupts. And in November, I am very, very proud that the European Parliament passed a resolution about nuclear security that welcomed the process that the United Nations has recently embarked on to make nuclear weapons illegal. And as an anti-nuclear campaigner for years and years and years, I had worked behind the scenes on that issue for 18 months with my staff. And I'm very proud that Manchester, which is the largest city in my constituency, has denoted itself a nuclear-free local authority. Nafsal Khan, who is my fellow Labour MEP in the northwest of England, held the position of Lord Mayor of Manchester and Mayor of Peace. Now, I know I'm here to talk about young people and activism and citizenship, but I also wanted to tell you about that because I have come to a nuclear-armed state, from a nuclear-armed state, at a particular time in history when nations are rattling sabers against each other and trading insults against each other. And when we have elected to the White House somebody who I believe to be a most dangerous conman. And it's not possible to have any kind of conversation anymore about peace and security and citizenship and democracy and about the future of the world and about the place of young people in shaping all this policy unless we talk about these things, unless we understand that what is happening in the world will affect whether or not Kashmir, the issue of Kashmir, disappears off the agenda again, or whether or not it becomes part of the conversation about peace and security and justice. So let's remember those things too, the macro, the global macro, as well as the specific issues that we're facing here. I should also say that I work also tirelessly on the issue of Palestine and Israel too. And I'm working on the delegation for relations with Bosnia, Herzegovina and Kosovo. And these terrible, the legacy of these awful, terrible conflicts is still felt very deeply by people. So, to the issues. Sorry, I was speaking without notes there, but I'm going to go back to my notes now. The peace process is often led by the same people who led the war, and sometimes with the same purposes in mind. And in order to truly progress, countries that are building peace need a new generation of leaders to lead towards peaceful and progressive futures, where fundamental freedoms are guaranteed for all its citizens. 60% of the Valley's population is below the age of 30, and so we have to ensure engagement with the youth. Real engagement, not a tick box exercise, not a means of giving young people a pretense, but real engagement with real power, so that young people can see that the suggestions they make, that the wisdom they bring is truly listened to and acted upon. But we need to do this particularly because of a shrinking jobs market and shrinking opportunities. Because when young people when they're not given responsibility, when they're not valued, when they're not given the opportunity to be active, engaged, entrepreneurial, this can lead to disillusionment, disenfranchisement, exclusion, and certainly the troubles that we're having in Europe is very much the result of this. So offering economic and social opportunities to young people, including ensuring a better representation of women and girls in the labour market, as well as in institutions, must be the very first item on the agenda at every level of government. A young generation of Kashmiris, young people who constitute the largest chunk of Kashmir's population, have been born into and grown up with a lifetime of struggle. And they must not be let down now. They have to be trusted, allowed to actively participate, as I already said. The future that we afford those young people now in terms of their engagement and involvement will be the future that they leave, that will be their legacy for future generations. We need to prepare this and coming generations of people with motivation, commitment and skills, and such as entrepreneurship, leadership, capacity building. They need to be the audacious problem solvers and the responsible active citizens of now, not just next year, not just 5 years, 10 years down the line, but now. I'm a great believer in people-to-people contact, in civil society, in engaged citizens. And I think a healthy society is one that has a very active civil society. And civil society does need to feel encouraged, valued, in order to pursue intercultural exchange, peace-building initiatives. When people are operating in their own silos and they're not engaging with each other, that's when suspicion builds up. I've discovered that if you put young people from different religions, different faith groups, different ethnicities, different languages, different nations together in the same room, and to engage in cultural activities, so you have a kind of reason for that, you can build very deep, meaningful relationships of understanding that go way, way beyond what politicians can do. Because what you can have is the understanding that we're all human beings. We all need and want the same things. We have rights, a right to life, right to health, right to education, right to determination, to self-determination. All these rights are the rights that all of us want. And when you bring young people and civil society, women together, because I come from an arts background. Before I was elected, I worked in community and youth theatre, and I used the arts as a tool for change. So I've seen it work firsthand. I know it works. And being able to share your culture, to be proud of your heritage, is again a very important aspect of our identity, who we believe we are, and what we feel proud of. But it is also a tool to share the songs and the dances and the stories, the history of your amazing heritage with others. To do that with a sense of pride is actually a way to bring people together. Now, the EU can be and is a key player in this kind of exchange. It's able to share, support and develop best practice, particularly in respect of young people. One of the key partners who I'm working with is in fact the British Council. The British Council is also an institution and an organisation that was created, like the EU, after the terrible wars in Europe. And it was created as a means for people to come together. And the British Council are supporting an extraordinary project globally at the minute called Active Citizenship. I'd be very happy to talk to people about this programme and how you can involve more young people from Pakistan, from Kashmir, in the Active Citizenship Programme, because this is a leadership building programme that goes across borders, across nations, and it builds capacity and it will build support for you. But it uses the very identity that you have in order to build capacity. I, in my work before being elected, worked on many EU projects that were about this very thing. And I worked in fragile countries. I worked in Ukraine, Turkey, Moldova, doing this kind of work, bringing people together, building capacity using culture. So I know it works. And I continue to see that work happening in Bosnia, in places like Srebrenica, where it's young people who are leading the way out of the suspicion between different ethnicities. It's young people who are coming together across very old conflicts. Also in Caribbean and Pacific countries too, where similar situations, such as in Rwanda, have played a terrible role in the genocide there. And actually, I work with an organisation that fights genocide globally and raises awareness of genocide. And so this is another issue where I think we need to talk about some of the things that have happened here in Kashmir. So my message today is addressed to civil society, to women, to young people in particular. It's your region, it's your community, this is your future. I hope very much that European partners will continue to support you in this path. But we can't do it for you. It's your job. You have to get involved. But if you reach out, we're there for you to support you. I know how difficult it is for people to get involved in the context of the violation of human rights, and particularly in violence that is currently taking place. I have to say, in Brussels, I went to the opening of the exhibition that was about the violence that is happening here. I have seen the photos there. I've seen the photos of the bodies of young people bearing the marks of the violence that's being perpetrated here. And I know it's very difficult when it's your friends, your family, you yourself who've been suffering. You feel that pain. But we have to look at that, we have to acknowledge it, we have to make sure that perpetrators are brought to justice. But we also have to move on from that and beyond that too. And so youth, feel empowered and give yourself and ask for, demand the safe space to participate in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this, now we invite our next panelist, Mr. Ken Stone, Member Executive Board, Alliance for Peace Canada. Honorable Ken Stone is an Executive Board member of Canadian Peace Movement, an anti-war activist and a political commentator. Mr. Stone participated in the Second International Tour of Peace in Syria in April 2016, during which the group observed the Syrian parliamentary elections of April 2013, visited homes to witness the destruction and reconstruction, and was the very first tourist to be allowed on the site of ancient Roman city of Palmyra, just liberated from ISIS by the Syrian Arab army with Russian air support. Putting hands together to welcome Mr. Ken Stone, Member Executive Board.
Mr. Chairman, honorable panelists, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum. Greetings. It has been a great honor for me to represent the peace movement in Canada at this important conference to promote the just demand of the people of Indian-occupied Kashmir, IOK, for self-determination. I wish to congratulate the young parliamentarians and the various departments of the Pakistani government for taking this very timely initiative. Since the extra-legal assassination of the charismatic Kashmiri militant Burhan Wani on July 8th of last year, the people of IOK have been in a virtual state of rebellion against the illegal and very brutal occupation maintained by India for 70 long years. And we all know that under international law, the people of Kashmir have the right to resist their illegal occupation in any manner they see fit. However, rather than accede to the very reasonable, peaceful, and democratic demand of the Kashmiri people for the fair and impartial plebiscite on their political future promised to them by the UN Security Council, as well as the Indian government in 1947, the Indian occupational force, which includes an incredible 800,000 soldiers and police, for a population of only 12 million people, has reacted by firing shotguns indiscriminately at crowds, permanently blinding hundreds of people, including young children bystanders. They have arrested hundreds of people, intensifying their reign of terror over Kashmir, which includes disappearances, mass graves, gang rapes of Kashmiri women, and other forms of torture. And in its megalomania, India has intensified its human rights nightmare in Kashmir by granting legal immunity to the soldiers and police, and by trying to alter the demographic balance, the demographic nature of Kashmiri society through the illegal colonization of Jammu and Kashmir by immigrants from other areas. We in the Canadian peace movement are also concerned by the danger to world peace posed by the long festering sore of the occupation of Kashmir, which embitters the relationship between the two nuclear-powered neighbors, India and Pakistan. 2 wars have already been fought between the two, in which 27,150 people were killed and hundreds of thousands were injured. Today, another military confrontation over Kashmir could easily lead to a nuclear conflict in which the entire planet could be rendered unlivable and the human race be rendered extinct. To avoid this catastrophe, we don't need a new formula for peace. The original UN resolutions of 1947 provide a simple solution. The Indian government needs to remove its troops. The people of Kashmir need to vote on their political future. It's simple. The difficult part is to get India to comply with its international obligation. Despite the best efforts of the Pakistani government, the Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora, especially in the UK, and people of goodwill around the globe to influence the UN and the policies of the countries representing the world community. Clearly now, we should take a page from the leaders of that other struggle against the equally long-standing illegal occupation that the world now knows very well as Palestine. Indeed, the Palestinian cause is far better known around the world than that of Kashmir at the moment. And yet, recognizing that the UN and the great powers of the world have completely dropped the ball on establishing a homeland for the Palestinian people, over 150 organizations representing Palestinian civil society gathered a decade ago to make a direct appeal to world opinion. They called upon the people of the world to support BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, against the state of Israel, in the same way that organizations representing the black majority called for BDS to help bring down the apartheid regime in South Africa. Well, that South African apartheid regime did indeed fall, and BDS is now having a growing effect against the apartheid regime in Israel as well. Now, applying this to Kashmir. The UN and the great powers have also completely dropped the ball on achieving self-determination for the people of IOK. It's time, in our view, for a direct appeal to world public opinion on this urgent matter as well. This conference is a good step in that direction. However, after the closing plenary in a few hours, all of us, the delegates, will disperse, and despite our best hopes, the momentum might be lost. What if instead we, the people who are so passionate about the cause of peace and the rights of the Kashmiri people, decided to remain seized of these matters and formed ourselves into a continuing organization to promote freedom for the people of Kashmir? What if the Pakistani government made available the very small commitment to create a secretariat for this continuing organization of one office for 2 or 3 dedicated young people to work? Imagine what 2 or 3 committed activists could do to link the work being done, more or less in isolation, by the tireless efforts of the Kashmiri diaspora in the UK, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Islamabad, the fighters inside Jammu and Kashmir, legal experts, Islamic scholars, and the peace movements around the world. In just a few minutes, I jotted down a dozen tasks that such an organization could undertake to link us together. They include establishing a website, a Facebook page, a Twitter account, a listserv, a speakers bureau, the writing of media releases, the organization of speaking tours, the circulation of favorable academic and legal articles, the dissemination of learned articles supporting the Kashmiri cause from various online news sites, helping to organize future conferences and tours of Azad, that is Pakistani-controlled Kashmir, aiding local Muslim and Kashmiri communities around the world to utilize the free resources of community and community radio and TV stations for the cause, preparing sample packages for local communities to organize coordinated visits to their local parliamentarians. The possibilities are endless if we were to remain organized and united. And the beauty of it is that it relies on the volunteer activities of tens of thousands of people of goodwill around the planet for a tiny fraction of what it must have cost to put on this excellent conference here in Islamabad. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, I look forward to the end of this ugly chapter of India's brutal and illegal occupation, to a time when those 800,000 troops and soldiers can return to gainful employment in their own country, and the huge sums of money required to post them year after year to Kashmir could be allocated instead to help lift 500 million Indians from utter poverty. I can envisage a peaceful and prosperous Azad Kashmir encompassing all of Jammu and Kashmir, freed of curfews, 48% unemployment, and all the other economic constraints of military occupation. And I can foresee the end of a nuclear sword of Damocles hanging over the subcontinent. I don't know when these happy events will take place, brothers and sisters, but I am sure that if we try organizationally to harness world public opinion, that day will come more quickly than we think. Thank you for your kind attention.
A very substantially focused speech by Mr. Stone, followed by another eloquent speaker, Dr. Zafar Bangash, Executive Director, Crescent International Canada. He is the Director of Institute of Contemporary Islamic Thought, ICIT, and also on the editorial board of Crescent International. He was one of the founding members, along with Dr. Khalil Siddiqui of the Muslim Institute in London. He is the author of several books. His latest works include Power Manifestations of the Seerah, examining the letters and treaties of Messenger of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In 2007, as a spokesperson for the Muslim Unity Group in Toronto, Mr. Bangash appeared with other Muslim leaders at a Toronto press conference calling for the Ontario government to address the problem with increased harassment of Muslims and racial minorities since 9/11. Putting us together to welcome Dr. Zafar Bangash, please. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chairman, Honorable Co-Chairman, distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. At the outset, let me thank the organizers of this conference, the Yemen Parliamentarians Group, and in particular the Honorable Shahzad Fatma, the Honorable Rumina Alam, as well as His Excellency Hafiz Zakria for inviting me to this very, very important conference. Yesterday, a number of speakers addressed the issue of the legal basis of the dispute in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as well as we heard heart-rending stories about the suffering of the Kashmiri people. Since today's topic is based or is related to Pakistan-India relations, the socio-economic and security relations, I'm going to concentrate on this topic in particular. Unfortunately, relations between India and Pakistan have been tense from the very day that Pakistan came into existence. And the way I see it is that the Indian leadership never really accepted the creation of Pakistan in the first place. And from that, of course, flowed the illegal, immoral, and brutal occupation of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. We know that we all live in an interdependent world. No country is an island unto itself. Based on that reality, most countries in the world will try to demonstrate a modicum of civility in their relationship with other states, as well as live as good neighbors. But regrettably, there are also some countries that act as bullies in order to assert their hegemony in the region. And if you want to look at a state in this region, you will find that India fits this description absolutely precisely. It is a bully, and it's a hegemonic power, and it tries to intimidate its neighbors. In fact, it's the only country in the region that has either attacked its neighbors or has threatened to attack its neighbors. In fact, in this respect, India is akin to the conduct of the Zionist state of Israel, or in fact, you can go further back to Nazi Germany. And in fact, if India persists with this kind of attitude, I'm afraid it would face a similar fate. Now, we know that the function of every state is to provide a socio-economic development and to provide peace and security to its people. But unfortunately, both India and Pakistan are held hostage by this because of the terrible situation that exists in Kashmir. Now, why doesn't the West pay attention to the plight of the Kashmiri people? Unfortunately, the Western world sees India as a potential market of 300 people that have surplus cash. While this is true, there are certain other factors that we ought to take into account. Number one, India is the second largest importer of weapons in the world. In July of 2016, it announced that India was going to spend another $223 billion in the next 10 years to acquire more weapons. India's defense budget is 50 times greater than that of Pakistan. Obviously, it puts Pakistan in a very, very precarious position, and it cannot lower its guard in such a situation. But I think there is another reality of India that we ought to take into account. As my colleague Ken Stone pointed out, there are at least 500 million people in India that live in absolute poverty. There's another factor that I think we need to keep in mind, and that is the rigid caste system in India that condemns hundreds of millions of people to absolute degradation and humiliation day in and day out. There are 549 million people, according to Indian government's own statistics, that do not have access to toilets. Similar number of people in India do not have access to clean drinking water. So you can see that there are a lot of problems that India faces, as well as, of course, India poses a serious threat to the very existence of Pakistan. And both countries, of course, are forced to spend enormous sums of money on defense expenditure or military hardware instead of spending this money on health and education to uplift their people. Now, I'm sure you know that this region that we live in, or actually I don't live here anymore, I've been here for 50 years now, but you live in this region has enormous potential. In fact, I would say that in particular, 3 countries in this region, if you study their statistics carefully, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan together have enormous mineral and energy resources. And beyond that, of course, the Central Asian region and Russia, and you see that this has great economic potential. And along comes, of course, this ambitious regional plan referred to as CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, as well as China's new Silk Road project that is going to really transform this region altogether. There is, in fact, a tectonic shift taking place in global economic power, as well as a tectonic shift in global political power. The world's center of gravity has now shifted from North America and Europe to West Asia, or what is referred to as the Eurasia land mass. And it is here that the future of the world is going to be determined as this project, CPEC, is brought on board. I also want to point out that the countries that, of course, acquire a lot of weapons, they become intoxicated by the preponderance of weapons. But unfortunately, they forget that the preponderance of weapons is simply not enough to determine every struggle or the outcome of every struggle. If the preponderance of weapons was a determining or a decisive factor, then France would still be in Algeria, America would still be in Vietnam, Russia would still be in Afghanistan, and Israel would still be in Lebanon. And there are a whole lot of other examples that I can give you, but I'm sure you see that the point is clear. I also want to touch on this aspect of nuclear weapons. This region is not made up of 2 nuclear powers. In fact, there are 5 nuclear powers, including, of course, China, Russia, and North Korea, besides India and Pakistan. And nuclear weapons, of course, are not something that should be taken lightly. These are horrendous weapons. We know from the example of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as from Iraq, when America used depleted uranium shells, and the horrific consequences of that and the use of those weapons, that everybody, people all around the world, ought to take this issue very, very seriously. But the problem is that if a country faces a an existential threat as Pakistan does from India, then obviously Pakistan is forced to take measures and steps in order to safeguard its own interests. So we come back to the fundamental issue as to why it is necessary for Pakistan to have nuclear weapons. I know that the Honorable Julie Ward is a peace activist. I'm also a member of the Peace Alliance, and we actively struggle for that, but a time emerges when people really have to take that step. You know, survival is a very strong natural instinct in all living creatures. Similarly, to live in dignity and freedom is a strong human instinct. And therefore, the people of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, cannot be denied that fundamental right, nor can Pakistan be deprived its right to secure its rights under the United Nations Charter as well as its own survival. But I believe that history is actually relentless in its judgment. It does not wait for anybody, nor does it spare anybody. And we today are on the threshold of a major breakthrough in terms of CPEC and the new Silk Road and a new beginning of prosperity for not only the people of this region but the whole world. But the crucial point in all of this is the unresolved issue of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the sooner India realizes, the better it will be for world peace as well as for the people of India and Pakistan. Thank you. May God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
With this, we move on to our next panelist, who has come all the way from India to occupy Kashmir, Dr. Muhammad Asadullah Wani, Professor of Urdu from the University of Jammu. He did his doctorate in 1996, and on a very significant topic, which reflects his spiritual linkage, I would say, with Pakistan. His PhD was on Iqbal or Jammu and Kashmir ka Urdu Khatam. He has been on various academic posts, led various institutions. He also got the Best Book Award in 1994-95, a very well-read man. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Muhammad Asadullah Wani.
और मेरे सामने फातिमा हज़रात, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरी दुआएं अल्लाह ने कबूल की हैं, लेकिन यहाँ आने की मैंने दुआ नहीं की थी, क्योंकि यहाँ आने का कोई भी नहीं था। लेकिन एक पहचाने के रास्ता बन गया और आपके सामने हाजिर हूँ। मैं क्योंकि यहाँ यंग जनरेशन है और कल से मैं देख रहा हूँ उनसे बात होती है तो कश्मीर के बारे में बहुत कुछ पूछते हैं। तो हमारे जो हम जैसे और हमारे बड़े हैं यहाँ, तो उनको तो खबर है, तो लोगों ने देखा भी होगा कश्मीर के लोग यहाँ हैं। लेकिन मैं थोड़ी सी झलकें आपको दिखाऊंगा कश्मीर की अपनी बातचीत में, और अगर आपको ये अच्छी लगे, आपके इल्म में इजाफा हो, मेरे रब का शुक्र अदा कीजिएगा। और अगर कोई खामी हो, मैं आप तक बात पहुँचाने में नाकाम रहा, तो भी दुआ कीजिए कि अभी कितने दिन जीना है, तो जीने का सलीका हो और कहने की बात कहने की जरूरत आ जाए। पर मैंने इस टॉपिक को लिया है तनाज़ा कश्मीर के अहम फरीक और अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा का किरदार। कश्मीर की तस्वीर का एक बेनज़ीर पहलू। जब भी मैं लिखने बैठता हूँ कश्मीर के ताल्लुक से, तो मुझे अपने खानदान के लोग याद आते हैं, क्योंकि मैं डायरेक्टली इन्वॉल्व रहा हूँ। मेरे बहनोई को फौजी ने मार दिया था, और एक भाई की बहू, पोती और बेटी, और 3 दिन फौजियों ने अपनी हिरासत में रखा और क्लीन चिट दे के किया इनके साथ। है जज्बा शौक मेरे दिल का भरम रख लेना, मैं बहक जाता हूँ आवारा ख्यालों की तरह। कश्मीर एक ऐसा नाम है, एक ऐसा खित्ता है
جہاں کے لوگ سپریشن میں رہے لیکن کبھی کسی کی تابع داری نہ برداشت کی نہ برداشت کرنے کے لیے تیار پہلے مضمون کے پہلے سے بھی یہی بات کہنے کی کوشش کی ہے، اور میں منتظمین سے چاہوں گا کیونکہ میرے سامنے بھی 2 مضمون بڑے جلدی میں پڑے گے تو 2-3 منٹ اگر میں زیادہ بھی دوں گا تو آخری آدمی ہوں، آدھے گھنٹے میں ابھی بریک ہونی ہے تو شاید میں آپ کو بات پہنچا سکوں۔ اس وقت ہندوستان کے زیر انتظام ریاست جموں و کشمیر کی 3 کھائیاں جموں، کشمیر اور لداخ ہیں، جبکہ پاکستان کے زیر انتظام صرف آزاد کشمیر ہے۔ جب ہم ریاست کشمیر کی بات کرتے ہیں تو اس سے مراد یہ تینوں اکائیاں ہوتی ہیں، صرف کشمیر نہیں، جو ماضی میں کبھی ایک آزاد اور خود مختار ملک ہوا کرتا تھا، جس کا اپنا بادشاہ تھا، اپنی حدود کی، مخالف بھی تھے اور اپنے حمایتی بھی، فوج بھی اپنی، عہدیدار بھی اپنا، اور اگر کبھی کسی ملک نے حملہ کیا تو متفقہ طور پر اس کا حملہ کرنے کی اس کی حکومت اٹھانی پڑی۔ سلطان محمود غزنوی نے 11ویں صدی عیسوی کے آغاز میں 2 مرتبہ کشمیر پر حملہ کیا، مگر دونوں بار شکست کا سامنا ہوا۔ اس کے بعد کشمیر کو اقوام عالم میں کئی اعتبار سے اولویت حاصل ہے۔ سب سے پہلی، کشمیر کو فردوس بروئے زمین کہا گیا ہے۔ اگر فردوس بروئے زمین یہاں نمبر 2، یہاں تاریخ نویسی کا ابتدا سے یہ رواج رہا اور کلہن کی رائے کرنگی 5000 سال کی تاریخ کو وہ رقم کیا ہے اس نے، اس پہ وہ بڑی تاریخ نویسی کی ایک روایت رہی ہے۔ تیسری بات، خواتین اقوام عالم میں سے خواتین پہلی خاتون کشمیر کی ہوئی ہے یشومتی نام کی، جس نے کشمیر پر حکومت کی۔ چوتھی بات، للہ ایشوری یا لل دت جس کو کہا جاتا ہے کشمیری میں، کشمیری کے پوئٹس ہوئی ہے، شاعرہ ہوئی ہے اور پہلی بڑی شاعرہ ہوئی ہے، جس کی شاعری اگر ترجمہ ہو کے آپ تک پہنچے تو مجھے 100% یقین ہے کہ وہ کسی بھی زبان کی شاعری کے کا مقابلہ کرنے کی اس کے اندر صلاحیت ہے اور وہ کر سکتی ہے۔ اتنی بڑی شاعری ہے، اس میں کیا فلسفہ ہے اور کیا چیز ہے وہ بھی ہے۔ اور اس کے بعد شیخ العالم نوندا رشی جس کو کہا جاتا ہے کشمیری میں، شمس العالم شیخ العالم، اسی پہ میں نے کتاب کیا، مجھے ایوارڈ ملا ہے۔ ان کی شاعری بھی اسی پائے کی ہے اور انہوں نے رشی کا آرڈر دیا ہے جس میں حضرت محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو وہ پہلا رشی، اویس کرنی کو دوسرا، اور تیسرے، چوتھے، پانچویں، چھٹے درجے پہ آنے کے بعد اپنے بارے میں ایک نفی کرتے ہوئے کہتا ہے، بک اس رشی میں کیا نام، یعنی میں کون سا رشی ہوا اور میرا کیا نام ہے۔ حضرت پاک مدینۃ العلوم میں ایک لائبریری تھی جو 1985 کے محاصرے میں جل گئی، اس میں ایک ہمارے کم از کم 4.5 فٹ اور 6 فٹ تختی کا قرآن شریف تھا جو آپ کی واردات میں جل گیا۔ امیر کبیر میر سید علی ہمدانی کا شاید کسی ملک میں اس طرح کا کسی کا جانا، فوجوں کو لے کے تو لوگ گئے ہوں گے، لیکن 700 سادات کا ساتھ لے کر کشمیر میں آنا ایک اپنے اندر ایک خاص ایک اہمیت ہے۔ اور صرف کشمیریوں کے لیے وظائف کا اوراد فتیحہ کے نام سے ایک وظائف کتاب ترتیب دی، اور حکمرانوں کے لیے ذخیرۃ الملوک نام کی کتاب لکھ کر حکمرانی کیسے کی جائے، کس طریقے سے حکمرانی کے کام انجام دیے جائے وہ بھی کی۔ کشمیر خوبصورت سیاحتی مقامات، جنگلات اور آبی وسائل کے لیے مشہور ہے، لیکن ابھی بھی کشمیر کے ساتھ لگتے ہوئے کشتواڑ کے علاقے میں کتنی حسین و جمیل وادیاں ہیں جہاں تک شاید ہماری حکمران ابھی تک نہیں پہنچے ہیں اور تو لوگوں کی آنکھوں سے اوجھل ہے۔ اور پھر یہ کہ 2 اہم مقامات ہیں جو ہمارے ہندوستان کے لوگ جہاں آتے ہیں یاترا کرنے، کشمیر میں امرناتھ اور جموں میں ویشنو دیوی۔ کشمیر کی عوام زیر تیزبین، پختہ کار اور سخت کوش، انسان دوست اور مہمان نواز ہوئے ہیں۔ شک بست نے اسی لیے کہا ہے، ذرہ ذرہ ہے میرے کشمیر کا مہمان نواز، راہ میں پتھر کے ٹکڑوں میں بھی پانی۔ اتنا ہی نہیں، کشمیر کو ریشیور کہا جاتا ہے، وشنو کا مسکر، قدم قدم پر وشنو کی جاتے ہیں، اور اس وجہ سے لوگ بڑے کچھ اعتقاد بھی ہیں اور وہ کچھ بھی سننے کے لیے تیار ہیں، لیکن وشنو کے بارے میں، منیوں کے بارے میں، ان بزرگوں کے بارے میں سننے کے لیے تیار نہیں۔ اور اندھی تقلید میں شاید ایک برسوں کی غلامانہ ذہنیت بھی رہی ہے. علامہ اقبال اسی نے کہا کہ کشیری بابندگی خوب لکھتا بتے میں تراش بھی سنگے مدارے زمیرش ہی از خیال بلندے خودی ناشناسے خود شرم سارے. کشمیر میں ناگسین ایک عالم ہوا ہے جس نے کشتواڑ میں ناگسین نام سے ایک عالم ہوا ہے جس نے کشتواڑی زبان میں بدھزم کے بارے میں کتاب لکھی. اور راجہ منندر سنگھ جو سکندر جو اپنے اس کے ساتھ آئے تھے اس میں ایک رہ گئے تھے اس کے بدھزم کے بارے میں سوال و جواب کا اس نے کتاب لکھی تھی. اور وہ کتاب پالی اور سنہالی ترجمہ اس کا موجود ہے. وہ کشتواڑی میں بھی موجود نہیں لیکن وہ پہلی کتاب مانی جاتی ہے. ایک اور بات جو آج تک کشمیریوں کو پریشان کر رہی ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ مغل بادشاہ اکبر نے کشمیر کو حاصل کرنے کی بڑی کوشش کی اور حاصل نہیں کر سکا. اور پھر کہا کہ یہ بھشت تو ہے مگر پورا دوستیاں یہ دوستیوں سے بھرا ہوا ہے. جب اس کو بار بار ناکامی ہوئی لیکن ایک چالاکی کی اس نے مان سنگھ کو بھیج کر یوسف شاہ کا جو آخری بادشاہ تھا اس کو ورگلا اس کو بات چیت کے لیے دہلی لیا. پھر ایسا لیا تو وہ واپس نہیں آ سکا. اور یہ مجھے لگتا ہے کہ یہ جو ہمارا یونو والا مسئلہ ہے یہ بھی ویسا ہی ہے کہ ہم سے وعدہ تو کیا ہے اس سے کہا کہ آپ ان سے بات چیت کریں لیکن پہلے تو بنگال میں رکھا وہ بہار میں اس کی خبر موجود ہے. ایک سب سے بڑا اہم اور عجیب و غریب واقعہ وہ یہ ہے کہ آج تک بھینسیں بیچی جاتی رہی ہیں مال مویشی بات بیچے جاتے ہیں زمینیں بیچی جاتی ہیں مکان بیچے جاتے ہیں. انسان کو کسی نے نہیں بیچا ہوا. ہاں وہ خرید و فروخت الگ ہوگی لیکن ایک ملک کو پورے کے پورے ملک کو انگریزوں نے بیچ دیا جانوروں پتھروں پیڑوں اور دریاؤں کے سمیت. وہ کشمیر ہے جو مہاراجا گلاب سنگھ نے خریدا 75 لاکھ نان شاہی روپے کے. اسی لیے علامہ اقبال نے اپنی شاعری میں کہا ہے کہ باد صبا اگر وہ جینوا گزر کنی حرف زما بمجھ سے اقوام باز گوئی کہ اے ہوا صبح کی ہوا. کبھی اگر خاصی آپ کو میرے کچھ لوگوں کو آتی ہوگی کہ اگر تمہارا گزر کہیں جینوا سے ہو تو ہماری بات بھی ان سے کہہ دینا کہ دہکاؤ کشتو جو خیاباں فروختن. انہوں نے زمینیں بیچ دی فصلیں بیچ دی باغ بیچ دیے قومیں فروختن تو سیاستاں فروختن. ایک قوم کو بیچ دیا لیکن کتنے سستے میں بیچ دیا. ایک پہلو یہ ہم نے بتایا اور ایک پہلو یہ بھی تھا کشمیر کی تصویر کا کہ جو اکبر بادشاہ سے پہلے جو اپنی حکومتیں جو کشمیر میں تھی تو کوٹا رانی ایک آخری حکمران ہوئی ہے جس کو شاہ میر نے جب حکومت سنبھالی تو اس نے اپنے آپ اس نے خودکشی کی. اس نے شاہ میر کی تابع داری قبول کرنی نہیں چاہیے. تو اس کے بعد سے لے کر 1947 تک 6.25 بلکہ اس وقت یہ 75 سال بھی اسی میں شامل کریں تو 750 سال ہم لوگ ایک مسلسل اس آگ میں جی رہے ہیں. ایک آگ ہے ایک راک کے نیچے دبی ہوئی جو بجھی نہیں ہے کہ ہم پہ لوگ ظلم و ستم کرتے تھے. آپ اطلاع کے لیے کہوں کہ ہمارے ہاں جو فرن پہنا جاتا ہے مرد جو فرن پہنتے ہیں پٹھانوں کی جب حکومت تھی تو ان کی دونوں طرف جیب رکھنے ضروری تھے کیونکہ ان کو سواری کرتے تھے اور ان جیبوں میں اپنے پاؤں رکھتے تھے. ایسا کبھی نہیں ہوا ہوگا کہیں. وہ اتنا ظلم و ستم کرتے تھے کہ پٹھان جھک کے اندر نہیں جا سکتے تھے. اس لیے کیا لوگوں نے چھوٹے دروازے کر دیے تھے تاکہ ان کی بہو بیٹیاں محفوظ رہیں. ڈوگرا شاہ حکمرانوں نے یہ کیا تھا کہ اگر کوئی کسی کا حکم نہیں مانتا تھا سر رہا اس کا کم کھال اتار دی جاتی جس میں بھوسا کر کے لٹکا دیا جاتا تھا چراہوں میں تاکہ لوگوں کو اس کی ہیبت اور اس کا خوف ہے. اب میں تنازع کشمیر کی طرف آتا ہوں تو تنازع کشمیر کے اسباب کیا ہے. یہ سب کے سامنے وہ ساری باتیں آ گئی کہ کشمیر کا تنازع یہ ہوا کہ 1947 کی تقسیم ہوئی اور تقسیم کے ساتھ ہی جوناگڑھ اور حیدرآباد کے ریاست کے ساتھ انہوں نے धोखा धड़ी करना शुरू की, तो इन्होंने भी सोचा यहाँ से कि हम इसको क्यों जाने दें। तो एक जो कोई इन ऑर्डर में नहीं था, कोई तरतीब दी हुई वो तंजीम नहीं थी, तो वो कश्मीर की तरफ बढ़े हो। फिर उस वक्त तो हुक्मरान जो हरी सिंह था वो इसको स्टैंड स्टिल रखना चाहता था, वो आज़ाद रहना चाहता था। सारे कागजात तो दौर की मतलब जो चीजें बताती हैं कि वो नहीं चाहता था किसी से इल्हा करना, लेकिन चूंकि इनको इल्हा का वादा किया गया और फिर इस सिलसिले में जितनी बार भी ये हिंदुस्तान खुद अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा में गया और वहां जाकर वो मुख्तलिफ करारदादें रखी कि हम यूं करेंगे, हालात नॉर्मल करेंगे, हालात साजगार होंगे तो हम ये करेंगे, लेकिन आज तक वो हालात साजगार न हुए और न होने वाले दिखाई देते हैं। तो मौजूद खातिन हजरात, फारसी जुबान में एक मुहावरा है कि कोले मसना जानेदार, कि मर्दों का कौल, मर्दों की बात जो है वो सच्चा, उसका वादा सच्चा पक्का और पुख्ता होता है। इसका मतलब नहीं कि ख्वातीन के कौल में जान नहीं होती, उनकी सच्चाई तो मां की ममता की सच्चाई है। लेकिन पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू जो एक सरबराह ममलकत, अदीब और मुअर्रिख था, ने खुद कश्मीर का मसला अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा में लिया और फिर बेलूम बहानों से इसे तवालत देते रहे, यहाँ तक कि 1998 में कश्मीर की को हिंदुस्तान का एक अंग करार दे दिया मनमोहन सिंह की हुकूमत ने। अब खुदारा ये बताइए कि अगर एक कौम के साथ दुनिया के एक बहुत बड़ी जमहूरियत के दावेदार, बानीकार और पेशरो का ये रवैया रहा और इस पैरोकार से की जा सकती है। फारसी में कहा किसी ने कि खींचते और मार कर जो पहली ही टेढ़ी रखी जाए तो ये दीवार आसमान तक में चली जाए तो टेढ़ी ही चली जाए। तनाज़ा कश्मीर के अहम फरीक, तनाज़ा कश्मीर के अहम फरीक तो गिने जाते हैं पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान, लेकिन एक और फरीक है जिसे आज तक नहीं पूछा गया, वो हम लोग, वो आप लोग। हमारा सौदा किया गया तो नहीं पूछा गया और हमारे बारे में फैसला लिया जा रहा है तो उससे नहीं पूछा जाता और हमें मौका दिया जाता है। कश्मीर तनाज़ा के कुछ और भी ताकतें हैं जो इसकी पसे पर्दा काम कर रही हैं, आप महसूस करेंगे। इसमें तो सबसे पहले मुझे जो लगता है, जो मैं अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा के बारे में सोचता हूँ, हमारी सोच उतनी नहीं जितनी बड़े लोगों की सोच है, लेकिन मैं ये सोचता हूँ कि अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा अगर कश्मीर और फलस्तीन का मसला हल नहीं कर रहा, क्यों नहीं कर रहा? इसलिए नहीं कर रहा है कि हम इस्लाम पसंद, हम इस्लाम के पैरोकार हैं। अगर हम इस्लाम के पैरोकार नहीं होते तो जैसे इजराइल के लिए उन्होंने रास्ता निकाला, उसके लिए हमारे लिए भी रास्ता निकालते, लेकिन वो नहीं चाहते हैं कि इस्लाम का बोलबाला हो। मुझे यही एक बात लगती है और शायद किसी को कुछ और मालूम हो। एक तो यह है, दूसरा एक ताकतें कुछ ऐसी हैं कि जो बड़ी ताकतें हैं, वीटो पावर जिनके पास है, वो शायद दूसरे मामलात में वीटो पावर का इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, लेकिन हमारे बारे में वो भी इसी अंदाज में सोचते होंगे कि अगर हम इनकी हिमायत करेंगे तो ये पहले से इस्लाम इस तेजी से फैल रहा है और लोग घबराए हुए हैं, ना मालूम और क्या कुछ हो जाए। फिर घर वापसी का एक राग अलापा जा रहा है और फिर बार बार मोहन भागवत ये कहता है कि कश्मीर के समेत हमने हिंदुस्तान को हिंदू राष्ट्र बनाना है। पिछले दिनों अखबार में आया था। अब वो लोग जो हिंदू राष्ट्र बनाने की बात कर रहे हैं, वो क्या ये सोचेंगे कि आप यूएनओ में जाके बात करो, वो अपने लोगों को वहां जाने देंगे? इतना भी नहीं, बल्कि मुसलमानों का तनासब मुसलसल कम होता जा रहा है। मैं जम्मू में रहता हूँ, मैं महसूस कर रहा हूँ, 3 वर्षों से मैं 1972 से मैं जम्मू में रह रहा हूँ। वहाँ लोग रिटायर भी हो गए, जो बाहर से लोग आए थे जिन्होंने यहाँ के सर्टिफिकेट बनाए, क्लास एक साथ के रिटायर हो गए। वहाँ मैं कल भी बात कर रहा था कि दादा जिसके नाम पे जो सजरा रस्म में दादे से शुरू होता है कि दादा का बेटा और फिर आगे कौन, तो दादा तो अभी छोटा है पर पोता रिटायर हो गया है। इस तरह की सर्टिफिकेट, इस तरह के रिकॉर्ड उन्होंने वहां बनाए हुए। एक और चीज जो बड़ी खतरनाक है, वो मुसलमानों के दरमियान इलाकाई तबकाती और मसलकी खलीजें पैदा की जा रही है। सुन्नी, शिया, हनफी और फिर अकीदे के मुताबिक फिर तो एक और चीज जो गोजरी, पहाड़ी और कश्मीरी की मनाफरत का एक सिलसिला शुरू किया, और ये ज्यादातर हमारे राजौरी, पुंछ और اس میں ہمارے ڈوڈا تک آتا ہے. ایک اور رینج کا سلسلہ ہے, یہ اس کو ہم ہماچل, یہ کیا کہتے ہیں, وہ ہمالیائی رینج کہتے ہیں, راجوری اور ہمارے, ہم اپنے کیونکہ ہمارے علاقے میں اب 3 ڈسٹرکٹ بن گئے, اس کو ہم وادی چناب کہتے ہیں. تو یہ بھی ایک سلسلہ ہے کہ ان کے درمیان ایک رسا کشی اور پاور کا مسئلہ وہ بن رہا ہے کہ کہاں گوجری جاننے والے کتنے ایم ایل اے ہیں, کانگریس کی وہ کیا کہتے ہیں پہاڑی کے کتنے ہیں, کشمیری کے کتنے ہیں, اور اسی طرح سے دوسری چیزیں بھی ہوتی ہیں. اب سوال پیدا ہوتا ہے کہ کیا یہ تینوں خطوں کو ابھی اگر یو این او میں یہ بات جائے اور وہ ہماری بات ماننے کے لیے تیار ہو جائیں, کیا ان تینوں خطوں کو یہ لداخ والے چاہتے ہیں ہمیں یونین ٹیریٹری کے ساتھ رکھا جائے, جموں والے تو اگر محبوبہ مفتی نے حکومت نہ سنبھالی ہوتی تو جموں ہاتھ سے گیا تھا, لیکن جموں ابھی اس وجہ سے ہے کہ حکومت کرنی اور حکومت میں بڑے مزے ہیں, ورنہ جموں مفتی مورچہ ایک عرصے سے کام کر رہا ہے کہ جموں کو ایک الگ اسٹیٹ بنایا جائے. اقوام متحدہ وہ کردار ادا نہیں کر رہا جو میں نے پہلے کہا جو کرنا چاہیے. وہ حالات سازگار ہونے کا انتظار کر رہے ہیں, اور حالات سازگار ہونے والے نہیں, بلکہ یہاں ہمارے کشمیر میں ایک پیراگراف پڑھوں آپ سمجھے ذرا. مسلسل انسانی حقوق کی پامالی ایسے کر رہا ہے ہندوستان کہ کشمیر کی کسی للہ عارفہ اور کسی حبہ خاتون کی عزت اور عصمت محفوظ نہیں, کسی نندا رشی اور ہمدانی کا لحاظ اور احترام نہیں, کہ میں نے تھوڑے سے اشاروں کی بات کی ہے. کتنی ماؤں کی گودیں خالی ہو چکی ہیں, سہاگنوں کے سہاگ اجڑ چکے ہیں, بوڑھوں کے سہارے چھن گئے ہیں, بچوں کے سر سے باپ کا سایہ اٹھ گیا ہے, بہنوں کے ہاتھ مہندی کے لیے ترس رہے ہیں, والدین کے کان اپنے جوان بیٹوں کے پاؤں کی چاپ سننے کے لیے ہر آن متوجہ ہیں, اور بچے باپ کے آنے کا انتظار کر رہے ہیں. ایک عورت نہ بیوہ ہے نہ سہاگن ہے, آئے دن کہیں نہ کہیں سے جنازہ اٹھ رہا ہے, عورتیں بال نوچ رہی ہیں, سینہ کو بھی کر رہی ہیں, ونون بھی گا رہی ہیں. ونون کشمیری کے گیت ہے, خوشی کے وقت پہ گایا جاتا ہے, جب کوئی شہید ہوتا ہے تو خوش بھی ہو جاتی ہے کہ یہ شہید ہو گیا. نعرے لگ رہے ہیں, آنکھیں اشکبار ہیں, ہر ماتم قدر ہے, گولی چل رہی ہے, گن چل رہے ہیں, پاؤں ڈھل گر رہا ہے, نماز جنازہ پڑھی جا رہی ہے, زندگی بھی چل رہی ہے, آزادی کا مطالبہ بھی ہو رہا ہے, آزادی قربانی مانگتی ہے, مگر کتنی لاکھ سوالات. بصارت سے محروم انسان اپاہج, زخمی, پابند, زنجیر, شیر قانون کی کوٹھریوں میں بند, ہٹ اور نہ جانے چاہتا, تن ہما داغ داغ شدہ پنبا کو جاتے جانے, سارا جسم داخل ہے, کہاں باہر. سامعین کرام, اللہ تعالیٰ نے دنیا کا موجودہ نظام آزمائش اور مہلت کی بنیاد پہ قائم کیا ہے, اصول پہ قائم کیا ہے. ہم بھی اسی نظام کا ایک حصہ ہیں, مہلت اور آزمائش سے گزر رہے ہیں. کشمیر کا مسئلہ سلجھانے, اسے حل کرنے, اقوام عالم کے سامنے لانے کے لیے پاکستان نے جس طرح سے کاوشیں کی ہیں وہ روز روشن کی کراریاں ہیں, کسی سے چھپی نہیں. آج کئی انٹرنیشنل پارلیمنٹری سیمینار اس سلسلے کی محض ایک کڑی نہیں, ایک بہت بڑا قدم ہے. مختلف ممالک سے آئے ہوئے جو یہاں شرکا ہیں, کشمیر کا خاص لیکن جذبہ دیکھ کے ہمیں یہ یقین آنے لگا ہے کہ یہ کشمیر کا مسئلہ, کشمیری ایک دن اپنی منزل مقصود کو حاصل کرنے میں کامیاب ہوں گے. مگر اس ضمن میں آپ سب کا رول بنتا ہے, سبھی کی کوششیں ہونی چاہیے, اور جہاں جہاں یہ لوگ رہتے ہیں ان لوگوں کی رائے وہاں بھی صحیح کرنی ہوگی. ہاں, ایک آخری بات, قرآن کی ایک چھوٹی سی آیت, ایک آخری بات جو قرآن کی ایک چھوٹی سی آیت میں کہی گئی ہے, جس کا مطلب ہے کہ صلح میں بہتری ہے. چنانچہ اقوام متحدہ کو ہندوستان, پاکستان اور کشمیری عوام کو بات چیت کی میز پر لانا ہوگا, ورنہ نہ جانے ایٹمی ہتھیاروں کا یہ دور ہمیں کس انجام سے ہمکنار کرے گا. لیکن ایک بار اس شہر پر ضرور غور کیجیے, یہ نہ سوچو کہ ذرا سا پیر ہن جل جائے, یہ نہ سوچو کہ ذرا سا پیر ہن جل جائے گا, آگ دامن کو لگی تو تن بدن جل جائے گا.
Thank you, sir, for a very touching speech, I must say. Before we go to announce the next panelist, I think it is an important announcement to make that once the international delegates came in the briefing, first evening, we distributed the resolution, which is going to be passed in the last session. So you're kindly requested once again, if you have any suggestions regarding or any amendments regarding the resolution, please you can give it to us by noon. We still have about 1 hour to give it to Mr. Zinkesa, who is just there sitting in the hall. So if any amendments in the resolution, please by 12 noon to Mr. Zinkesa. I have the kind privilege now to welcome on the dais the co-chairperson for this session, the Honorable Sardar Awais Ahmed Khan Nagari, Member National Assembly of Pakistan, and the vibrant chairperson of the Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly of Pakistan. He comes from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. He graduated from the University of Rochester, New York, with honors in 1994 with economics, games theory, and political science as his majors. Mr. Nagari was the Federal Minister for Information Technology in the Cabinet of Prime Minister Jamali in 2002. He is known for his smart policies that helped him to promote cellular networks across the countries. Under his leadership, Pakistan won the GISM for excellent IT policies. Ladies and gentlemen, putting our hands together for welcome.
Honorable Chairman, Prime Minister Raja Farooq Ahmed, distinguished panelists, honorable parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate my dear young and energetic colleague, MNA Shazaf Fatma Khwaja, for having coordinated and arranged this very successful conference. I was unfortunate enough not to have attended the morning inaugural session that was inaugurated by the Prime Minister himself yesterday because of bad health. It's a great honor to be here, and thank you so much for having invited me. I'd just like to share a few of my thoughts and facts that might help us conclude what the situation is like these days between Pakistan and India as far as our relations are concerned, and try to focus and stay focused on what the security implications and the socio-economic implications of this relationship are for this South Asian region. We must first try to look into the mirror and reflect upon the fact that India has more than 23% people who are poverty struck. India or Pakistan, on the other hand, has 12.7%. The illiteracy rate in India is 25%. That in Pakistan is close to about 40%. The unemployment in India is tens of millions of people. In Pakistan, it's millions of people. Our infant mortality rate in India is about 41 people out of 1,000 face infant mortality. In Pakistan, it's a lot worse. And if you compare this to a country like Cuba, that has been resource hungry and has been the most embargoed country in the world, like Cuba has just 3 out of 1,000 people who, 1,000 infants who actually face mortality. Malnutrition in Pakistan. More than 37.5 million people in Pakistan are not receiving proper nutrition. On the other hand, Indian political leadership and prime ministers have termed malnutrition as a national shame. These are the conditions, these are the socio-economic indicators, and these are the facts and figures that these two great democracies of South Asia actually face as we speak today. And ladies and gentlemen, still, in spite of all these figures, India spends over 50 billion US dollars on its military budget, and Pakistan close to 10 billion
annually. And they are both nuclear states. We are prone to conflict in the future, having a strong record of conflict in the past. We have been at war 4 times in history. India, unfortunately, has a huge appetite for hegemony in the region, and Pakistan is absolutely sure and confident of the fact that India cannot achieve this goal of hegemonic influence that it wants to exert in this region. Having said all this and having mentioned the facts on ground, some countries in the global community are trying to use us, India and Pakistan, as proxies to counter the growing influence of the Chinese in this region. That is disturbing the balance of power, which is absolutely critical and important for peace in South Asia. Just take the example of the sale of the howitzer artillery guns in the recent past. In spite of artillery being used to martyr Kashmiris on this part of the LOC, where students and where buses of civilians and where ambulances and where hospitals were being attacked by artillery gunfire on the other side of the LOC, at the same very instance, great human rights protectors and great powers of this world, including the United States, were yet selling $750 million worth of artillery guns with the latest technology to the Indians. What a shame it is. What a shame for all human rights activists. What a shame for all the international community that boasts and survives and sustains on the fact that they are for human rights and they are ready to do anything for human rights across the world. ICBMs, just recently, just 1 or 2 days ago, the Indians have successfully tried their intercontinental ballistic missile systems. What a shame it is. They want Pakistan now to compete with them. They want us to waste more of our money in trying to develop these systems just to be able to secure ourselves from the mindset that the Indians have as we speak today. They want us, instead of funding our schools and hospitals in this country, to be investing into more military equipment just to keep ourselves safe from a country that has hegemonic intentions to have hegemonic influence throughout the region. All these are causes of conflict, including Kashmir. And they can, and they have a huge potential of actually resulting in a conflict with very serious implications. Look at the water issue itself. One of the most important issues that exists between these two countries is the water issue, and unfortunately, the international community is paying no heed to it. There are irresponsible statements coming in from the Prime Minister of the biggest democracy in the world. Prime Minister Modi is being irresponsible to a point where the international community should be actually raising its voice against the irresponsible statements coming in from the Prime Minister of the biggest democracy in this world. Unfortunately, they're quiet. When I was sent as a special envoy to the United Nations by the Prime Minister, and I went and interacted with the chairman, with the High Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission in Geneva, I told him very frankly, I said, my constituents, I represent the Prime Minister as an MNA, as a member of the Parliament, and my constituents ask me, why is the international community behaving like a hypocrite for the past 70 years? Why isn't our 70-year-old United Nations resolution not being adhered to? Why are the human rights activists in the European Union who have the who have enough awareness to speak about death penalty in our country, why don't they speak of human rights violations on the other side of the LOC and the Indian occupied Kashmir? Just because they're multinational companies and the organizations have a few $billion worth of profit to extract from the Indian middle class, which is a huge market for them, just because of their financial interests, they are completely avoiding and they are completely ignoring the human rights violations that are taking place in Kashmir. So we need to encourage, ladies and gentlemen, regional connectivity. We need to encourage one belt, one road kind of projects that will create dependence on us countries over each other and try to keep us away from war and conflict. We need to have an all-inclusive regional economic growth plan responsible enough to continue for the past 3.5 years to make overtures to the Indians to come and sit down across the table and do constructive, proper dialogue with us. On the other side, are people who for mere political gains in state elections, we see them martyr our children, women, young and old. We see them violate international laws that the international community is blind not to see for self-interest. We have to resolve the issue of Kashmir if we want to avoid conflict in the South Asian region in the past. No matter what kind of progress we make in the future, we come back to square one every 1 or 2 years because of Kashmir having been unresolved. We're not saying resolve Kashmir as the resolution has been passed. It is important that the resolution should be adhered to, but there need to be out-of-the-box solutions and there need to be radical thinking coming out. And when you sit down and finalize the resolution that this conference makes, let's try to look into and try to find ways and means where the issue, where the conflict on the basis of Kashmir, where the issue of Kashmir itself can have some kind of a resolution that is acceptable on both sides of the border. The media needs to be a lot more responsible, especially on the Indian side. It's claustrophobic. When you sit down and interact with the media in India, they find Pakistan as the punching bag. They think that the advertisement revenues can go up because of Pakistan's compassion. That is further fed. That kind of a feeling is further fueled by the statements coming out of the Indian political society, and hence the public perception and the opinion remains very hostile towards Pakistan. On the other hand, the environment in Pakistan is a lot friendlier, is a lot more responsible. In spite of being a younger democracy, a smaller democracy, having been marred by military rule all throughout our history, Pakistan is responsibly acting as a state that has a huge appetite for peace and prosperity in this region. My last few things that I think it's my responsibility to put before you were the policy recommendations of the Foreign Relations Committee of India that all us political parties had accepted and had presented to the Foreign Office with complete unanimity a few months ago. It's about 7-8 months ago. Unfortunately, some of those recommendations have been followed by the Foreign Office and some have not. And I'd like to, through this, I'd like to take this opportunity to put before the media and yourselves what those recommendations were. We had very clearly recommended that Pakistan should get into selective engagement with Indians. We need to step down from the comprehensive engagement part. The comprehensive engagement actually identifies about 10 primary areas where Pakistan and India need to engage. We have recommended 4 to start with because it's going to be more focused and result oriented. And those 4 areas were Kashmir, water, trade, culture and communication. And these are the 4 areas that were based on, our recommendations were based on 4 principles. 4 principles based on the alphabet R. Reciprocity. These principles were based on these recommendations were based on the principle of reciprocity from India. We need to have simultaneous or sequential response from the Indians if you need to go ahead and engage with the Indians. We need to have the principle based on result, R for result-oriented dialogue, where we have resolution of these conflicts in these particular 4 key areas. It has to be based on the reduction, R for reduction of trust deficit, and it has to be based on the resumption of dialogue, which will be the end result of the first 3 R's that we focus on and try to engage ourselves with. In the end, I'd like to again congratulate the coordinators and the organizers for this conference. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and I wish and hope that Pakistan and India actually will move closer together. It is not at all, as we speak, it is not at all. The ball is in the court of the Indians. They need to respond positively, and we do have an appetite for peace. We do have an appetite to talk to the Indians, and we do have an appetite to talk to the Indians and have a constructive dialogue process where these 2 countries can get closer together. But we're not too pushed either. Don't take our appetite is we have an appetite, but we're not starved for it. Pakistan's economy is doing very well. We are looking westwards. We are well on our road to economic development and progress through the Pakistan and China economic corridor. We are part of the One Belt, One Road entire program. We're extending this program all the way to Iran and Afghanistan and Central Asia. We are not isolated. We have a very good relationship with, thank God, at last. We have a better relationship with major powers in our region than with powers across 7 seas. We have an understanding with major powers on how to deal with terrorism and how to counter terrorism and the Daesh activities in Afghanistan. We are playing a constructive role. Pakistan is not in isolation. Pakistan is well on its way to economic prosperity. So we're not starved to talk to the Indians, but we're a responsible state, and we are interested in talking to the Indians for the sake of peace in South Asia and in this region. Thank you.
We now open the floor for the IDP questions. Raise your hand.
My name is Niaz Sham, Professor of Human Rights at the University of Hull, United Kingdom. Just had a question for Mr. Lagari. You talked about human rights organization. I like a point you made are very interesting and appealing, but you said shame on human rights organization. I was slightly depressed. I don't know whether you have seen the recent reports of Amnesty International on Kashmir, Human Rights Watch, the US State Department report, the FCO, the British Foreign Office reports, and all these human rights organization reports. The human rights violation in Kashmir are highlighted. So my question is, I don't know what else you want to expect from these organizations. This is what they do, they produce these reports, and even at the UN forum. Now, the most recent, the 2015 Amnesty International report was even discussed in the British House of Commons. There was a good debate on it. And also the credit of that goes to the British parliamentarian that they take interest on the Kashmir issue. So that is just one point. The specific question to you is, what else you want them to do? One thing. Second, about the use of language. I thought you would be thinking more strategically rather than say shame on them. You want them on your side. You could have easily said they should do a little more rather than giving that type of statement for a responsible person like you. Thank you.
Well, this one. First of all, I'm very grateful that you think so highly of me that you weren't expecting this kind of a word from me. Secondly, I didn't say shame on the human rights organizations. I myself am one of the beneficiaries, and I have witnessed this myself. And the Human Rights Commission, it's not just the organization, the Human Rights Commission itself, and the High Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission, and himself said was for the first time he did acknowledge internationally and publicly that there are human rights violations taking place across the border on the Indian side of Kashmir. I was actually, I myself feel ashamed as being one of the policy makers of being and part of the club of the policy makers of the entire world, where the governments, the influential governments in the world, are not responding. The part of being ashamed is that nobody is responding to credible organizations' recommendations that are coming out in the international media as of today. So in spite of the Amnesty International and the Human Rights Commission having actually clearly spelled out the fact that there are human rights violations and somebody needs to take care of that population that is being tortured by the Indians for the past 70 years, in spite of that, it's not actually transforming into policies or into doable actions by countries which can make a difference.
Thank you. I think because today is Friday and Honorable Chairman said it's on the way and we'll be reaching another 15 minutes for the final one. So I'll now request the Honorable Chair, the Prime Minister, Dr. Farooq Khan for the final remarks. Please, Honorable Prime Minister, please. Put your hands together for the Prime Minister.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to congratulate the young parliamentarians from the National Assembly of Pakistan for organizing International Parliamentary Seminar on Addiction Dispute. I also welcome honorable member of the Parliament, other important persons from abroad and from the occupied Kashmir. The Pakistan-India relations have been complex and hostile since the creation of both Pakistan and India, and has been marked by suspicion, distrust and hatred. The sustained enmity has resulted in 3 wars and various crises between them. The main cause of tension is Kashmir dispute. Pakistan has tried its best to resolve Kashmir issue through peaceful means such as dialogue, negotiation or international mediation. But India has not accepted international facilitation nor bilateral negotiation to produce any tangible results. On the other hand, the people of Indian heritage Jammu and Kashmir never accepted its military occupation since long struggling to get rid of the Indian occupation. I would like to share with you that in recent years, 3 massive non-violent uprisings across the Kashmir was run by the people of Kashmir in 2008, 2009, 2010 and now 2016 who wanted freedom and right of self-determination which was promised by Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. Jawaharlal Nehru not only made a commitment with the people of Kashmir but also the international community to provide Kashmiris a choice to decide the future. I would like to read this one of the many pledges which were made with the people of Kashmir. He said, quote, I want to stress that it is only the people of Kashmir who can decide the future of Kashmir. It's not that we merely just said that to the United Nations and to the people of Kashmir. It is our conviction that one that is borne out by the policies that we persuaded not only to Kashmir but everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, 2016 has proved to be one of the most dramatic periods in the recent history. The current uprising in Kashmir has entered into 6 months, and once heaven on earth has now turned into a virtual hell. Telephone services, internet, and even social media were mostly blocked to keep people uninformed and away from the freedom. The people of Kashmir have shown immense resilience to resist Indian occupation during the last 7 decades. But this resilience and resistance touched new heights during the last couple of months. The unflinching resolve, sheer commitment to the freedom against Indian cruelty, cowed down by all Indian plans of crushing their just cause of freedom and justice. Dozens of unarmed peaceful protesters have been killed. Thousands are wounded, and hundreds of them are mercilessly branded due to the pellet guns and huge numbers. These inhuman acts are breach of international and humanitarian law. I am pleased that despite all odds, people of Kashmir have shown unmatchable determination to continue freedom struggle. Kashmir is the only highly militarized region in the world. Indian government says that nearly 170 militants are active in Kashmir. My question is, do you really need 700,000 plus soldiers to fight 170 militants? The right of the self-determination of people of Kashmir is the unquestionable and inalienable right. Kashmir has internationally recognized dispute territory by the United Nations. The inhuman treatment of people of Kashmir must be stopped forthwith. Kashmir people have everywhere deserve their fundamental human rights. They should be allowed to speak, communicate, and assemble freely. They should live free of fear and depression. My question is, how long can you suppress the people of Kashmir? I must tell to India that brute force, no matter how strongly applied, can never subdue the basic human rights of freedom, desire for freedom. I am sure that freedom is not merely a distant goal, but people of Kashmir seek time is not far when people of Kashmir will celebrate freedom and run a normal life where fear will be have no place. The most significant challenge to the security of this region is the Indian hegemonic attitude towards the smaller states of the region. India had admitted its role in the separation of East Pakistan. Involvement of destabilizing Pakistan provided support to anti-Pakistan movements. Militant organizations involved in terrorist attacks in Pakistan are receiving training funding from India. The last 2 years have particularly marked by increase in cross-border firing an LOC and working boundary, causing deaths of hundreds of innocent civilians and massive displacement. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a hard fact that the development and prosperity of the region is not possible without a lasting peace. Pakistan and India are neighbors and 2 independent countries. Friendly relations between these neighboring countries are necessary for socio-economic development and security of this region. Peace and stability in South Asia are also Kashmir. It is pertinent to mention here that the failure of SAR can only be attributed to the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Indian role to sabotage this and SAR summit is divergent with their own declared goals of regional peace and stability. In fact, Indian role in the region has always been detrimental in establishing a regional balance instead of creating harmony in the region. India always stepped up their effort to build up military might. India's created arms race in the region toward Pakistan. Such an approach is fatal for peace, stability, and indecision. As Mr. Nadari said that having a large economic base, India can have more conventional weapons. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, we cannot match with that amount of money with India. And so we have to lean upon the non-conventional weapons such as nuclear weapons. And these are 2 nuclear armed neighbors, and any time it can be any even system. I would like to conclude. 1. Durable peace and stability is not possible without finding a just solution to the Kashmir issue, keeping in view the nature of Kashmir. Second, international community should play its role for the resolution of disputes between Pakistan, India, and particularly Kashmir. It must be understood that the rule of Kashmir dispute is key to peace, progress, and development in South Asia. Thank you for listening.
I think while the honorable chair was saying is on the way, so what we can do is that we have, I think sometimes it's very allows for a question. I think one of our friends, Professor Rasulullah wants to add something to that we give you on the floor, please.
मैंने जिन जो बातों की तरफ इशारा किया है, हमारे यहाँ एक खदशात पैदा हो रहे हैं जो मुख्तलिफ तबकों के दरमियान कर रहे हैं, उस सिलसिले में हमने कोशिश की, हमने अंजुमन इत्तेहादुल मुस्लिमीन कायम की है और हम सब आइमा से राब्ता कायम कर रहे हैं कि ये कोई मसाइल और ये अकायद एक तरफ छोड़ के सिर्फ 3 बातों पे ध्यान दो, एक अल्लाह, एक कुरान और एक क्या कहते हैं हमारे पैगंबर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम, तो इसी पे हम इत्तेफाक करेंगे और हमेशा से हमने बड़ी कोशिश की है। दूसरी एक और बड़ी कोशिश हम करने में कामयाब हो गए, मेरे पास उसका डॉक्यूमेंट भी है लेकिन मैं यहाँ उसकी मैं नहीं पहुँचा पाया। हमने वहाँ मुख्तलिफ तबकात के साथ यानी हिंदुओं में मुख्तलिफ तबके हैं, दलित हैं, दूसरे हैं, सब मिलकर हिंदू सिख और मुसलमान मिलकर एक पीस फोरम बनाया है। अभी पिछले यानी जिस दिन मैं यहाँ आया उससे 2 दिन पहले उसकी हमने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस की है और हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं, वो हमसे इस बात पे ज्यादा जोर दे रहे हैं कि हमारी ये बातचीत होनी चाहिए और ये 3 तबकों के दरमियान होनी चाहिए, हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान और कश्मीरी अवाम के साथ होनी चाहिए और उन ख्यालात और जज्बात की तर्जुमानी होनी चाहिए कि उनके तहजीब ईरानों में मामला गया है और इसमें हमारे एक एक्स मिनिस्टर जो है वो इसके हाल का करता है, उनका नाम बाबू, वो ये बहुत जबरदस्त मतलब एडवोकेट कर रहे हैं ये प्रोग्राम के, हम ये इस तरह का एक फोरम बना रहे हैं जो हमारे
मुख्य chairman साहब आएंगे there we disconnect at the start of the closing ceremony, but we can take a question and then at that time.
Thank you. This is Umair Perez Khan from National Defense University. I wanted to ask Sir Uwais Lagari that you said that we are not isolated in the world. If we are not isolated in the world, sir, can you please tell me that why were we not able to get the support from any state as UN, United Nations General Assembly regarding Kashmir issue? Thank you.
But I think this is not factually correct that you were not able to get any states or any member country of the United Nations did not support Pakistan in the Kashmir issue. They did. There were many countries like that. Yes, there was Turkey, there was Poland, and there were many other countries of Azerbaijan. They all supported the cause of the Kashmir issue, and they also supported the resolution on the Kashmir. Yes, the so-called more influential countries usually don't say too much because they care about bilateral relations. We are not more than a resolution on Kashmir. That's precisely what we are trying to encourage across the global community, that these countries and their policy makers need to be sensitized on the issue of Kashmir a lot more. It's our responsibility to do that. It's the responsibility of the people of Kashmir themselves also, but because of lack of access of social media and the internet, stories from within Kashmir are not being able to reach so-called policy makers across the world, which needs to happen.
Can you take another question down there?
I'm Hamid Wari from Namal University. I teach international relations. My question is addressed to our honorable guest from India, Mr. Wani.
Indian occupied Kashmir is my
Indian occupied Kashmir,
Thank
yes,
you.
that's right. Whereas the other guests who were invited from Indian occupied Kashmir have not been granted visa. You're very lucky, and we appreciate that you have projected, the conditions as they are existing. But my question is that basically now it is the effort by the people in IOK who should take so many actions so that their message goes across and this issue is highlighted and that a resolute solution should be achieved at. But what has been seen is that if say in 65 or 71 or later, if some people had gone into IOK, then the locals, they made report to their respective military authorities, and that such efforts during that time of 1965-71 were not successful. It is not understood whether people in IOK wants to be they want liberation, joining Pakistan, or they want to continue with whatever they are having it now. Sir, your comments.
May I first correct the record? The visas were granted by the Pakistan High Commissioner over there, but they were stopped at the border. Sir.
सबसे पहले तो हम ये चाहते हैं कि हमारे साथ बातचीत की जाए। बातचीत जब होगी तो फिर फैसला होगा कि आप लोग किसके साथ रहना चाहते हैं, हमारे साथ रहना चाहते हैं। हम भी सोचेंगे कि हम किनके साथ रहना चाहते हैं। पहले तो हमारी आइडेंटिटी ही तस्लीम नहीं की जा रही है, हमसे तो पूछा ही नहीं जा रहा। हमारा फैसला होगा तो हमें तो पूछा ही नहीं जा रहा कि किसको क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना। तो पहले तो ये बात क्या हो जाए, फिर हम मिल बैठ के, आप और हम सब मिल बैठ के फैसला करेंगे कि हम आजाद कश्मीर को भी अपने साथ मिलाएंगे, वो इसके साथ मिलाएंगे। फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने कहा कि आजाद कश्मीर क्या किसी के बाप का है। अगर करण सिंह कहता कि मेरे दादा ने खरीदा है तो बात आई गई थी, हकीकत है तो उसने खरीदा है। तो ये बातें हम उसको, जब हमें ये मौका मुहैया किया जाएगा, हमारा एक क्या कहते हैं वो इस्तेमाल राय होगा हमारे। मैंने बचपन में सबसे पहले अगर मैंने जब पढ़ना लिखना सीखा तो मैंने माँ के संदूक की पोटली खोलकर उसमें से 10 या 11 जितने हम भाई बहन थे उसकी वो मैंने टिकटें पढ़ी, उसमें महाराजा शुमारी लिखा हुआ था। आज तक मुझे वो हाथ कर रही, मैंने पूछा ये क्या है, ये पाकिस्तान की टिकटें। तो मैंने सोचा ये पाकिस्तान कहाँ है। तो वो फिर जब बड़ा हुआ तो मुझे पाकिस्तान का पता चला और ये नहीं था मालूम कि मैं वाकई पाकिस्तान में भी आऊंगा। तो ये आज मैं आपके बीच में मौजूद हूँ। लेकिन वो महाजरा शुमारी की टिकटें उन बुजुर्गों को पता नहीं था कि क्या थी वो क्या नहीं थी। लेकिन एक तस्वर तो हमने देखा है, एक जनरेशन खत्म हो गई, दूसरी भी खत्म हो रही है। अब तीसरी जनरेशन जो है जो हमारे सामने है, अब ये क्या चाहते हैं, ये तो उस वक्त जब हमें फैसला करने का मौका दिया जाएगा, जब हमारा हमसे राय पूछी जाएगी तो हम फैसला कर लेंगे मिलकर। पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान तो अलग चीज है। बात तो यही हुई है कि क्या वो पाकिस्तान के साथ रहना चाहते हैं या हिंदुस्तान के साथ। लेकिन एक तख्ता तो ये भी क्या होगा कि वो आजाद रहना चाहेंगे। अगर आजाद भी रहना चाहेंगे तो वो तो भी आजाद नहीं रहने देंगे, क्योंकि उनकी नीयतें ही नहीं है कि हमको कुछ दें। तो देखा जाएगा ये वक्त आने पर।
The last question was we almost time.
जी मेरा नाम अनवर अब्बास है, बल्कि उससे मैं हूँ। मुझे ये जानना है कि दुनिया भर में बहुत से मकामात पे ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशंस होती हैं, इजलास होते हैं, रात में विचार के हसले मारे जाते हैं। हम किसी की ह्यूमन राइट्स के लिए कितनी आवाज़ उठाते हैं कि हम एक्सपेक्ट करें इंडिया से कि वो कश्मीर में ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशन से हमें आइसोलेट करें, हमारी आवाज़ में आवाज़ उठाएं। मेरा दूसरा सवाल है,
Sir, 80 good day, sir. Good time. Thank you. That's it. You can give it back.
Why should I answer all the difficult questions?
Anybody else?
Alhamdulillah. Human violations के ऊपर पाकिस्तान भी अपनी आवाज उठाते हैं। पाकिस्तान तो इतनी आवाज उठाता है कि लोग हमें भी क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं कि पाकिस्तान का क्या काम है दुनिया के हर कोने में वो अपनी उम्र पूरी उठाने बॉस्निया हर किस्म के इशू के अंदर पाकिस्तान हाथ उठाता होता है। अभी जो जान के मुसलमानों के ऊपर बहुत ही जुल्म ढाए जा रहे हैं। म्यांमार के इशू के ऊपर हमारे मुल्क के अंदर पॉलिटिकल रैलीज होती हैं। हम तो इतने पॉलिटिकली एक्टिवेटेड और सेंसिटाइज हैं कि मुख्तलिफ जो सियासी जमातें हैं वो जाके मुख्तलिफ जगहों के ऊपर रैलीज करती होती हैं और उन सियासी जमातों के ऊपर हमारी पार्लियामेंट और मीडिया के अंदर क्रिटिसिज्म आता है, जहाँ लोग मुख्तलिफ ममालिक के अंदर इस किस्म की मजालिम के खिलाफ आवाज उठाते हैं। तो हम लोग काफी पॉलिटिकली एक्टिव और एक ह्यूमन राइट एक्टिव और मैच्योर सोसाइटी है और होने में भी और वक्त लगेगा, लेकिन पाकिस्तान सेंसिटिव है।
मैं थोड़ा सा असिस्ट करना चाहता था कि जब एज ए कश्मीरी ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंटेरियन हम दुनिया को कहते हैं कि हमारे ह्यूमन राइट्स, कश्मीरियों के ह्यूमन राइट्स, तो मैं डाकोर में जाके पीस एंड रिकंसिलिएशन इनिशिएटिव वहां पे किया, जो फिर कतर जो दोहा प्रोसेस था उसको हैंड ओवर किया। वो चाहे म्यांमार का हो, चाहे चेचनिया बोस्निया का हो, चाहे वो सेंट्रल अफ्रीकन रिपब्लिक हो, दुनिया भर के जहां भी जो भी इश्यूज हैं वहां पे
Thank you very much.
Let me finish. I know Honorable Speaker Sahab and Chairman Sahab is most welcome. मैं सिर्फ ये बात कहना चाहता हूँ, यासर अरफात साहब से जो मेरी मुलाकात हुई थी पहली, तो यासर
So with your permission, can we proceed, sir? Can we start? The national anthem of Pakistan, Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Please raise on your seats.
Now I will call Madam Samya for the chair.
Excuse me, can you guys sit? We can't see. Just sit on the stairs, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا ولقد جاءتهم رسلنا بالبينات ثم إن كثيرا منهم بعد ذلك في الأرض لمسرفون. صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. For that cause, we decreed upon the children of Israel that whosoever kills a human being for reasons other than manslaughter or corruption in the land, it shall be as if he killed all mankind. And whosoever saves the life of one, it shall be as if he saved the entire mankind. Our messenger had come to them with clear evidence, yet even after that, many of them continued to exceed limits throughout the earth. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.
So I'll ask the PIPS staff to play the video message by the Hurriyat leader, Mr. Yasin Malik. We received this message yesterday.
Respected Chief Guest, Chairman, and other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank the Young Parliamentarian Forum of Pakistan, National Assembly of Pakistan, for inviting me to address this House gathering of lovely people, honorable parliamentarians, honorable ambassadors, and respected scholars. I say Assalamu alaikum to all of you. We all yearn for salam for peace in South Asia and in the world. As a member of the oppressed Kashmiri nation and Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, I pray for the growth of cordial relations between Pakistan and India, which is a precondition for the resolution of Kashmir conflict and for a lasting peace in South Asia. The young and radical group of Pakistani parliamentarians who are the future nation and state builders of Pakistan would hopefully share my sentiments regarding the importance of promoting sustained efforts at peace in South Asia, particularly aimed at improving Pakistan-India relations. The trend of Pakistan-India border hostility is grown by Kashmiris on both sides of line of control. And usually, the people of both parts of the Kashmir are the biggest voters of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this international seminar rightly focuses on the humanitarian dimensions of the Kashmir conflict, when a people's uprising in India, occupied Kashmir, has been brutally suppressed by Indian military and paramilitary forces. The 5-month-long mass uprising was crushed by an unbridled use of force. The Indian Central Police Force admitted to firing some 1.3 million pellets in the first month of uprising, which has resulted in a plague of death and damaged lives. Doctors in Kashmir estimated the total number of eye injuries caused by floods in the first 4 months after uprising to be 1,178. Human suffering is impossible to quantify, but numbers do tell a story in Kashmir. Around 100 people have been shot dead by floods or knocked down by a train of bullets. Around 15,000 Kashmiri youth have been injured roughly. 10,000 youth have been arrested, most beaten and tortured in detention centers. Millions have been arrested en masse by Indian police and military forces, who in day and night raids and have administered collective punishment to Kashmiris in the form of the destruction of their property, ranging from destruction of window panes, doors, laptops, motorbikes, cars, or whatever has come in the sight of rampaging troops. Parents and elderly relatives of young protesters have been arrested to force young protesters into submission. Democracies like India not only maim and kill, but they also indulge in blackmail. They punish the families and relatives of dissidents to force them into silence. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard a lot about human security from the United Nations. The international community tells us that the world must move from outdated conception of state-centered national security to a people-centered conception of human security. We also hear about the doctrine of to be about the state's responsibility to protect its citizens, but we continue to see the limits and repeated failures of liberal humanitarianism the world over. Many powerful Western governments have encouraged, subjugated people's life. Kashmiris will give up armed struggle and adopt non-violent means in their struggle for freedom. In the past 10 years, Kashmiris have primarily relied on non-violent means, in particular aspirations for Azadi or independence. However, Indian state has an increasing use of military force to suppress mass uprising in Kashmir and drop all spaces for non-violent resistance. The people's uprising of 2008, 2010 were crushed by massive military force, and the story of the 2016 people's uprising has seen history repeating itself. Ladies and gentlemen, the world largely remains mute to the sufferings of Kashmiris. Diplomats of the major Western democracies have even stopped paying lip services to the question of human rights in Kashmir. When some of them visiting new occupied Kashmir will lecture us on the virtues of India's participatory democracy and about India's democratic success. It is like blaming the victim democracy, be it in a formal sense or substantive, may work for the middle class and the elite in India. But Kashmiris have since 1947 harvested a bitter fruit of this democracy. This is not to suggest that Kashmiri's movement for Azadi or freedom is a case of democratic misgovernance or decay of democratic institutions, but it is an outcome of the forced incorporation of the peoples in a country against its will. Ladies and gentlemen, India as a growing market has become the darling of powerful Western countries. Stockholm International Peace Research Institute has listed India as the #1 importer of weapons for the years 2010 to 2014. A major Western power, France, recently inked an arms deal with India, which is worth $8.8 billion. In the world of big business and arms deals, where do Western powers stand on human rights? Can the oppressed people of Kashmir and other oppressed nationalities expect any solidarity from Western democracy like USA, UK, France, and European Union, which have huge economic stakes in the weapon industry? Can the David of human rightly really ramp over the blocks of war industries in big business? Ladies and gentlemen, a poor country like India is spending $40 billion on its military annually. A smaller economic economy of Pakistan has an annual defense budget of over $8 billion. The defense budgets of the two countries continue to experience a regular increase annually. The primary reason behind the massive spending on arms is the Pakistan-India rivalry over Kashmir, which leads to a huge loss of precious economic resources and limits economic potential of both the countries. But surprisingly, the Human Development Index ranking of India and Pakistan stands at 130 and 147 respectively. Ladies and gentlemen, a just and lasting solution to the Kashmir conflict, which gives pregnancy to Kashmiri self-determination, would usher in an enduring and positive peace in South Asia. It would not only put an end to the suffering of Kashmiris, but also help unlock the massive economic potential of South Asia with a population that roughly adds up as 1/4 of the world's total population. Thank you.
Now I request Madam Shubha Khaja, MNA, who is the General Secretary of the YPF, that she should come on stage and she should particularly read the message of another leader, Meanwhile Zumafar. Please, Madam Shubha.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Chairman and distinguished audience, Assalamu alaikum. I express my gratitude to the Young Parliamentarians Forum, National Assembly of Pakistan, for inviting me as a guest speaker to its seminar on various dimensions of Kashmir issue and the desirability of its resolution. I would love to personally participate in the event, but due to continuous refusal by the Government of India to issue a passport in my favor, I am unable to participate. It would be my pleasure, however, to put forward my viewpoint on the topic before the distinguished gathering. Kashmir dispute, one of the oldest disputes on the United Nations agenda, remains a continuous threat to the peace and stability of not only South Asia but the entire world. As all of you know, that this is a dispute with multi-dimensions and multifacets. It has a historic dimension, a humanitarian dimension, a strategic dimension, a security dimension, an economic dimension, and many others. Focusing on the humanitarian dimensions of the dispute, it has over the years become the cause of the worst suffering for the entire population of Jammu and Kashmir, besides affecting the peace and tranquility of more than 1.5 billion people of the subcontinent. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives since the start of the dispute in 1947, and this phenomenon is still going on. The non-resolution of the dispute has also become the main reason of enormous sufferings of the people in Kashmir. The flagrant violations of the basic human rights of the people at the hands of Indian forces has turned the life of an average Kashmiri miserable. The continued refusal of the government of India to recognize the right of self-determination to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the use of brutal force from undemocratic means to crush the peaceful struggle has been adopted as a policy to subjugate the people of Kashmir. With the arrival of every new year, the abuse of human rights in Kashmir touches fresh heights. In 2016, People's Uprising, which still continues, for the achievement of their right to self-determination, as provided in the UN Charter and the resolutions of UN Security Council on Kashmir, more than 120 people fell to the brutal violence of government forces. About 20,000 people were injured, hundreds of them by pellet fires, in which scores of youth got pellet in their eyes, thus lost their eyesight forever. Thousands of people of all ages from 13 to 18 years of age were incarcerated, and most of these still languish in jails and detention centers. All the prominent leaders of resistance movement, including myself, were either jailed or put under house arrest. Besides worst human rights violation and other aspects of the humanitarian dimension includes the pain and suffering of the divided families who have forcibly been deprived of the natural right of being together, or enjoy and celebrate the moments of joy together, or express sorrow or a word of sympathy to one another at the hour of grief. The abject and miserable life of millions of people living on both sides of the line of divide is one of the more derivative of this dispute. Is one more derivative of this dispute. Because of the regular exchanges of fire on this line, people have no alternate but leave behind their homes and herd to run for safety and shelter. Being the main cause of tension and core issue between India and Pakistan, this dispute has become the basic reason for a race of acquiring weapons and war machinery for both countries, thus spending huge amounts of public exchequer on arms race, which could otherwise be spent on improving the education, healthcare, communication, and other infrastructure sectors to help eradicate poverty, disease, and illiteracy from the region. Besides the humanitarian aspect, this dispute is a serious threat to the people and security of the entire region. After achieving nuclear capability by both India and Pakistan, there looms a continuous and serious threat of a nuclear war in the region, which has also global consequences. Any spark in the nuclear arsenal of these countries, even by accident or misunderstanding, can bring a nuclear holocaust to the region. In such a situation, when this dispute has acquired enormous humanitarian dimension and has become a constant threat for the security of South Asia and the world, there is a need to address this issue seriously and resolve it in accordance with the resolutions of the United Nations and as per the wishes of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. The continuation of this dispute has made the situation in Kashmir more volatile and unstable. In spite of occasional overtures by India and Pakistan towards each other for the resolution of all pending issues, including that of Kashmir, between Indo-Pak, the fact remains that the trust deficit between the two remains there as ever. Whenever any effort is made to overcome this trust deficit and move forward on positive lines, it is overshadowed by some unfortunate incident which pushes the situation back to square one. It also remains a fact of the history of Kashmir of Kashmir dispute that in spite of tremendous efforts by a number of countries, especially soon after the passing of the resolutions in the United Nations, these resolutions could not be implemented, and even after the decades marks at the inability of the UN to implement its decisions. In spite of their non-implementation, UN Security Council resolutions remain a strong foundation of the legitimacy of Kashmir as an international dispute, which automatically casts an obligation on the international community regarding the resolution of this dispute. Besides the ethical obligations, there are compelling reasons which require efforts by the global community to come forward and play their role in the resolution of the Kashmir dispute. I once again thank the organizers of this seminar, especially Shaza Fatima Khwaja, Member National Assembly of Pakistan, and General Secretary Young Parliamentarians Forum, and her other colleagues for organizing this seminar. Events like this will go a long way for understanding the various aspects of Kashmir dispute and bringing forth the desirability of an agreeable and honorable solution of this dispute. Thank you, Mirwais Dr. Umar Farooq, Chairman, all parties for this conference.
Thank you so much, Shaza Fatima Khaja. Now I would call upon Mr. Zafar Bandish to please come to the dais and please give the summary of the whole panels and all. Thank you so much. Mr. Zafar Bandish.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This was the second plenary session at which I was the moderator, and the theme was Kashmir issue, a humanitarian crisis. We had, of course, a number of speakers in that session who talked about the situation. We, in particular, got some very, very moving testimony from Mashal Hussain Malik, whose husband Yasin Malik, in fact, just gave that message from Indian occupied Kashmir, where he is receiving treatment, but there is a great danger to his life because we cannot really trust the Indian authorities to do the right thing. And of course, also Sohail Esha, one of the journalists and activists who came from Indian occupied Kashmir. He was one of two persons who managed to come to Pakistan, although there were 5 persons that were given visas by the Pakistan High Commission in Delhi, but only 2 of them, including, of course, Dr. Asadullah Wadi, who managed to cross the border after facing a lot of interrogation at the border at the hands of the Indian authorities. So we heard harrowing tales of oppression, torture, all kinds of other horrific crimes that were perpetrated against the people of Kashmir. There were, of course, also a number of other speakers, including the Honorable Malik Uzair Khan, who's an MNA, and Honorable Amjad Bashir, who is a member of the European Parliament, as well as Dr. Niaz Esha, who is a professor of law at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom, as well as Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed, Vice Chancellor of the University of Sargodha. Now, the legal experts, of course, provided the legal dimension to the Kashmir dispute, which is well known, but I think it is very important that it's constantly repeated, because India's effort is to delegitimize the struggle in Kashmir and to walk away from its legal obligations. So it's important that that aspect be constantly emphasized so that the world knows, everybody else knows, and particularly the younger generation know that there is a legal basis for the Kashmir dispute, that it's not something that has emerged out of thin air, and that it has to be addressed on that legal basis. Secondly, it's also important that those of us that have been in this hall or have been present in this seminar for the last 3 days, we have an obligation, those of us that are in Pakistan, those that have come from abroad, including myself, that we have an obligation to carry this message forward, that we cannot allow this situation to simply be put aside once this seminar is over. The purpose of the seminar is that this message should go abroad, that this should be communicated, that we should organize groups, that we should organize meetings, that we go and meet various members of parliament in our own countries, and in fact the parliamentarians that have come, Lord Nazir Ahmed, Lord Qurban, and of course we also have Afzal Khan Saab from the member of the European Parliament, that they should, number one, communicate with their fellow parliamentarians, and the rest of us to lobby our parliamentarians to build a grassroots movement in support of the people of Kashmir. Because there are really horrendous crimes that are being perpetrated over there, and regrettably, I think that's a myth. The Western media and the Western governments have really turned a blind eye to this. I just want to give you one example. I live in Canada, and of course, there was a lot of hue and cry when some incidents occurred in Lahore, in Joseph Colony. And of course, some Christian houses were attacked and destroyed in an arson fire. And for several weeks, this matter was being discussed in the Canadian media. And in fact, what they did was that they did not really go to the root of the problem. I was in Lahore a few days ago. I was particularly anxious to find out exactly what had happened. And what we discovered was that that incident occurred because there were two friends, a Christian and a Muslim, who had got drunk. And obviously, he couldn't have been a very good Muslim if he got drunk. But they got into a fight. The Muslim got beaten up, and he then made the issue that this Christian has insulted the Prophet of Islam, and of course, all hell broke loose. People got mad. They went and burned the colony. But what has not been reported in any media outlets is that not only the government of Pakistan officially condemned that attack on the people, a number of ministers went to visit that colony, but that all the houses that were damaged or destroyed have been rebuilt in a much better shape. But you will not hear about this, you will not read about this in their media, because it doesn't serve their agenda, it doesn't serve their narrative that there is anything positive that is taking place. They only want to present Muslims in a negative light, and since the Kashmiri people, the overwhelming majority happen to be Muslims, so therefore they are not worth any attention and any effort. And that's why it becomes incumbent upon us that we become their voice and we take their message abroad and to raise this issue at whatever forum that we are at. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Zafar. Now I would ask the PIPS staff to play the video documentary which they have prepared, The Plight of Kashmir's Women. Thank you.
पाकिस्तान हमारे आवाज इस दुनिया तक पहुंचते हुए पाकिस्तान के जरिए से पहुंचती है हमारा वाहिद मदीना पाकिस्तान इसलिए हम पाकिस्तान के सफारतकारों को ये पैगाम देना चाहते हैं वो हमारी आवाज को दुनिया तक पहुंचा के ताकि दुनिया के आलमी दबाव के जरिए से हिंदुस्तान पर दबाव रखना आ जाए वो ये बात मनवाने का मतलब लोगों को आ जाए कि कश्मीर उनका अपना हिस्सा नहीं है कश्मीर उनका अपना हिस्सा नहीं था इसलिए मैं जागरण करना चाहती हूँ जागरण कर सकते हैं और हम तब तक लड़ेंगे तब तक हम नहीं बैठेंगे जब तक हमारा हक
Pakistan delegation is obliged to respond to the statement made by the Foreign Minister of India earlier today. Her statement is a litany of falsehoods about my country and a travesty of facts and history. It only reflects the deep deceit and hostility of her government towards Pakistan. We reject all the baseless allegations made in that statement. These allegations are designed principally to deflect global attention away from the brutalities being perpetrated by India's over 500,000 occupation force against innocent and unarmed Kashmiri children, women and men in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Their call for freedom has been met with characteristic Indian brutality. During the last 2.5 months, over 100 innocent Kashmiris have been killed, hundreds blinded, and thousands injured by Indian bullets and pellets, including infants, children, women, and men. This is the worst form of state terrorism, a war crime that India has continued to perpetrate in the situation of foreign occupation in Jammu and Kashmir for the past many decades. Pakistan demands a full and impartial investigation of these Indian atrocities and massive human rights violations in Kashmir. We ask that India accept the investigation proposed by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and allow them unfettered access for that purpose.
Peace and normalization between Pakistan and India cannot be achieved without a resolution of the Kashmir dispute. This is an objective evaluation, not a partisan proposition. Our predictions have now been confirmed by events. A new generation of Kashmiris has risen spontaneously against India's illegal occupation, demanding freedom from occupation. Burhan Wani, the young leader murdered by Indian forces, has emerged as a symbol of the latest Kashmiri Intifada, a popular and peaceful freedom movement led by Kashmiris, young and old, men and women, armed only with an undying faith in the legitimacy of their cause and a hunger for freedom in their hearts.
जब तक हम मिलेगी आज़ादी हक हमारा है आज़ादी ये पैगाम उन औरतों उन सबका आपने सुना एक शेर it was on the black day which I'm not a poet but it's a pain which I felt and I want to say this and I want अगर कुछ गलती इसमें होगा मैं माजूर चाहूंगी कि अब बस ऐ रब ये दुआ है कि समुंदर बढ़ जाए, ऐ रब बस अब ये दुआ है कि समुंदर बढ़ जाए, मूसा आ जाए और अब ये मौजा हो जाए। ऐ वादी कश्मीर तुझे जन्नत की है नज़ीर। With this, I want to invite Ms. Julie Ward to come over here and to say the resolution. Thank you.
First of all, just to say a really big thank you for letting me be part of this very moving and really important conference. And the incredible, just to say thank you for the incredible warmth and generosity and welcome that I've experienced from the minute I got off the plane in the early hours of the morning. I feel very at home here, and I will pledge to work really hard with all my heart, my soul, for your cause whilst I can, in whatever situation. So, the Young Parliamentarians Forum International Seminar on Kashmir, Islamabad, Pakistan, January the 5th to the 6th, 2017. The resolution as follows. Noting the ongoing grave human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir in particular, since the latest round of killings and brutalities that began on July the 8th, 2016, in the aftermath of the extrajudicial execution of a young Kashmiri freedom fighter, Burhan Wani. Noting the Indian defiance to the calls by UN Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva, OIC and elected representatives in the UK and Australia for an independent investigation into human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Condemning the use of pellet guns by the Indian occupation forces to willfully blind a whole generation of Kashmiris, mostly youth in their thousands. Recalling UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir, resolution number 38, 39, 47, 51 in 1948, resolution number 80 in 1950, resolution number 91, 96 in 1951, resolution number 98 in 1952, resolutions number 122, 123, 126 in 1957, UNCIP resolution on the 13th of August, on the 13th of August 48 and on the 5th of January 49, that inter alia promised Kashmiris their right to self-determination. Underscoring that the UN has a responsibility towards stopping Kashmiri systematic genocide by the Indian occupation forces. Noting with deep concern the India's approach to systematically change the demography in India-occupied Kashmir to convert Muslim-majority Kashmiris into a minority. Expressing deep concern on the arbitrary arrest of over 10,000 Kashmiris with their fate unknown. Recalling the massacres committed in Indian-occupied Kashmir by Indian occupation forces between 1990 and 2016. Taking note of the findings of International People Tribunal's report entitled Buried Evidence in the Wake of Discovery of Unnamed and Unmarked Mass Graves in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Noting India's blatant violation of UNSC resolutions on Kashmir, UN Charter and international humanitarian laws. Recalling the offer of the United Nations Secretary General to help resolve the long-festering problems of Jammu and Kashmir through dialogue. Reminding India of the repeated pledges made at the highest level to allow them to decide their future through a plebiscite in particular. the statements by Prime Minister Nehru in October 1947 and 1951, in which he stated that we, India, have declared that the fate of Kashmir is ultimately to be decided by the people. That pledge we have given, not only to the people of Kashmir, but to the world. We will not and cannot back out of it. We are prepared, when peace and order have been established, to have a referendum held under the auspices of the UN. Expressing concern at the escalating tensions between Pakistan and India on the line of control in killing of Kashmiri civilians. 1. Whereas the human rights situation of the people of Jammu and Kashmir under Indian occupation continues to deteriorate. 2. Whereas egregious crimes are being perpetrated against defenseless civilians, particularly women, more than 10,000 of whom have been gang raped. 3. Whereas any Indian civilians or security personnel have been arrested, much less prosecuted for such crimes. Whereas the culture of impunity has continued as per the December 6, 2012 report of the IPTK and APDP. Whereas India maintains an occupation force, so this is number 5, whereas India maintains an occupation force of more than 700,000 troops in Jammu and Kashmir and hundreds of thousands of armed constabulary and police. 6. Whereas enormous resources are expended on the acquisition of weapons, including nuclear weapons, thereby threatening the security of the entire region. 7. Aware that such resources could be better utilised for the upliftment of their respective populations in India and Pakistan. The participants of the Young Parliamentarians Forum's organised international seminar on Kashmir therefore 1. Call on India to cease forthwith all human rights violations against and stop bloodshed of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. 2. Call on the government of India to allow UN independent investigations into the human rights situation, to establish responsibility and determine appropriate punishment for the perpetrators of such crimes that are against international humanitarian law and international human rights law. 3. Call on India to withdraw all its troops, including armed constabulary, from Jammu and Kashmir, particularly from cities, towns and villages, to enable resumption of normal life and create enabling environment for the plebiscite to be held under the auspices of the UN, as enshrined in UN SC resolutions on Kashmir. 4. Request the United Nations to assume its responsibility of organising the plebiscite under its supervision. 5. Request the OIC Secretary General to compile a report on human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir and urge constant monitoring of the human rights situation by the IPHRC. 6. Urge UN and other relevant forums to investigate all massacres, gang rapes, fake encounters, forced disappearances, willful blinding using pellet guns, etc., committed by the Indian forces and Hindu terrorist organisations, RSS, etc., and bring the perpetrators to book. 7. Request all national governments to exert bilateral pressure on India to ensure its compliance with international obligations flowing from humanitarian and human rights law, as well as UN SC resolutions. 8. Request the international media to fulfill its obligations by highlighting the continued suffering of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. 9. Call on all concerned individuals to remain engaged with the tragic situation. 10. Request all international organisations, including the OIC, to play a meaningful and effective role in the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. Further, that these organizations formally approach India to allow access for international organizations to Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. 11. Resolve to remain engaged with the situation and continue to highlight the plight of the Kashmiri people at all possible forums. Adopted in Islamabad on the 6th of January 2017 by the participants from Canada, the UK, EU and Jammu and Kashmir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Julie Ward. Member of the European Parliament. Honourable Ms. Julie Ward is a British member of the European Parliament for the North West England region for the Labour Party and was elected in 2014. She has a master's degree in education and international development from Newcastle University and graduated from an adult learning course in 2012. Ms. Ward campaigns against violence against women, organizing events for 1 billion rising. Before being elected as an MEP, she was part of an international delegation to Belfast to discuss the role of the arts in peace process and run social enterprise. Thank you very much, Honourable Ms. Julie Ward. Now, as you all heard the resolution, those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hands. The resolution is approved. Thank you. Now, for me, it's an honor. I really feel honored to do this. I now invite a legal life of human rights and democracy in Pakistan and the whole region, Honorable Chairman, Senate of Pakistan, Senator Niyaza Rabbani, for his presidential address. Truly an intellectual leaving on the millstone unturned for the rights of people. The Honorable Senator remains our inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honorable Chairman, Senator Niyaza.
General Secretary, Young Parliamentarians Forum, the Honourable Prime Minister of AJK, Mr. Zagari, the Chairman of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, National Assembly of Pakistan, members of the podium, the Honourable Lord Nazir, the Honourable Lord Urban, Mr. Zafar, Director PIPS, Begum Atiya Anayatullah Sahiba, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I would like to take this opportunity of thanking the Young Parliamentarians Forum for having given me this honor to be able to be present with you at the concluding session of this conference or seminar. First of all, I take this opportunity to congratulate not only the organizers, but all the delegates and participants for the culmination of a successful conference. I would also like to take this opportunity of congratulating the conference on the passage of a unanimous resolution that we have just now witnessed. I am really at a loss of words, and I really don't know where to begin, and what to say and what not to say. Because the story of the atrocities, the story of the divided families, the story of the pain and anguish, the stories of torture, the stories of the use of rape as a weapon of war, stories, the gruesome stories of disappearance of persons, is a story which is untold. And at times I begin to feel that perhaps the Western world, which claims itself to be the keeper of the conscience of the world, has shut its eyes. Because when I see, when I hear, when I read, when I listen to how innocent children get to come of age, have lost their eyesight because of the use of the pellet gun, and I see a silence of the graveyard in the West, I at times begin to question my own consciousness. That the keepers of the conscience of the world, who talk about human rights, who talk about fundamental rights, who teach us what democracy is, what the right to self-determination means, remain silent spectators as the people of Kashmir continue to anguish, is suppressed and oppressed by the Indian occupation. But then this is nothing new. Western history is replete that where it suits Western strategic interests, the slightest of violation of fundamental rights is paid out. And where it does not meet their strategic national interests, like in Kashmir, the heavens may fall, but they will be the silence of the grave. I think these are contradictions. These are contradictions which have been coming on from 1947. The world has remained a silent spectator to the gradual annexation of the occupied state of Jammu and Kashmir by the Indian Union. They negate their very own basis when in 1947 they took over the princely states of Hyderabad and Junagadh on the basis that they were Hindu majority areas which had a geographical contiguity with them. But when it came to the question of Kashmir, where the population was Muslim, the ruler was Hindu, and they wanted independence, they turned their head, they closed their eyes. But the world even then remained a silent spectator. UN resolutions came and UN resolutions went. But alas, till today, UN resolutions are begging for implementation. But none has the moral courage to even raise that issue in these so-called ivory towers tonight. Then we saw how Article 370 was introduced into the Indian Constitution. Then we again saw the Delhi Agreement of how the Indian flag has attained ascendancy, of how fundamental rights were extended, so-called fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution were extended to the state of the occupied state of Jammu. We saw the gradual annexation of the occupied state of Jammu and Kashmir, but we saw the world remain silent. We have seen some of their own organizations, human rights organizations, which whenever they feel convenient, raise the question of Jammu and Kashmir, the atrocities against the people of occupied Jammu. But even they are forced to say that rape is being used as a weapon of war. Even they are forced to say that detentions, illegal detentions, and extrajudicial killings are taking place. Even they are forced to say that mothers and wives and sisters wait in anguish, and thousands have lost their eyesight, waiting for their sons, husbands, and brothers to come back from Indian detention. But till today, nobody knows where they are. But even that is not enough. Even that does not suffice for the conscience of the world to wake up. The United Nations is an institution which is redundant, an institution which cannot respond to the needs of suffering people, is a redundant institution. An institution which only dances to the tune of Western imperialism. An institution which only dances to the tune of American imperialism is an institution that we in this third world have no longer any respect for. यूनाइटेड नेशन, इराक के लिए तो वो यूनाइटेड नेशंस की सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल रेजोल्यूशन पास कर सकती है और उसको जस्टिफाई सकती है, लेकिन कश्मीर की जो रेजोल्यूशन इतने अरसों से पास हुई हुई है, उसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कानून के तहत जो मेरे हुकूक हैं उनका जामिन ना बन सके, ऐसे अदारे का कोई फायदा। और मुझे ये भी कहने दीजिए, let us be honest and let us be frank. If I have quarrel with the United Nations. I have a quarrel with the OIC as well. How effectively has the OIC acted on the question of Jammu and Kashmir? At the drop of a hat, whenever there is any problem or issue in any Muslim state, Pakistan comes forth. Pakistan puts its national security at stake. But when it comes to the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the OIC looks at its bilateral relations with India. And let me say this, because this is a seminar. This is a seminar on Kashmir. We are trying to find a way forward. And if we are going to mince our words, if we are not going to look at the ground reality, then we are going to be caught in a cobweb. And a cobweb is something that we in Pakistan may be able to live with, for the simple reason that we are not facing the atrocities, we are not facing the suppression and oppression that the people of occupied Jammu and Kashmir are facing. But if we are true to their cause, then we have to reassess ourselves. We have to relook at the realities. Therefore, I find that even the OIC is just only OIC. I think what we need to do is we need to reevaluate. We need to relook, we need to rethink. And in doing that, मैं ये समझता हूं कि पहले जो कदम उठाना चाहिए और जो यंग पार्लियामेंटेरियंस फोरम ने उठाया कि अब इस जिद्दोजहद का बेड़ा पाकिस्तान की जानिब से पाकिस्तान के पार्लियामान को उठाना चाहिए। ये पार्लियामान का इनिशिएटिव होना चाहिए। पार्लियामान को आउटरीच करनी चाहिए और उसके अंदर मैं ये समझता हूं कि पहले स्पीकर्स के लेवल के ऊपर इस मसले को टेक अप करना चाहिए। जहां पे चेयरमैन सेनेट या स्पीकर नेशनल असेंबली जाएं, वो अपने काउंटर पार्ट से जब बात करें तो सरे फहरिस्त कश्मीर के अंदर जो जुल्म और ज्यादती हो रही है उसको सरे फहरिस्त रखा जाए। दोयम, जो ह्यूमन राइट्स कमेटी है, दीगर ममालिक के पार्लियामान के अंदर उनको दोनों ऐवानों की सेनेट और नेशनल असेंबली की ह्यूमन राइट्स कमेटीज जो हैं वो सेंसिटाइज करें कि जी ये ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस और इंटरनेशनल लॉ की वायलेशंस हो रही। नंबर 3, जो फॉरेन अफेयर्स कमेटीज है वो अपनी काउंटर पार्ट कमेटीज पार्लियामेंट के अंदर उनको सेंसिटाइज करें कि ये ज्यादतियां जम्मू और कश्मीर के अंदर ऑक्युपाइड स्टेट में हो रही। और चौथी चीज نام اس کا پارلیمانی کمیٹی ہے کشمیر کی، لیکن در حقیقت اس میں اس وقت صرف ممبرشپ نیشنل اسمبلی کی. لہذا دراری صاحب آپ سے میری استدعا ہو کہ آپ جو اوریجنل ریزولوشن ہے اس کو امینڈ کروائیں، اور جیسے ماضی میں ہوتا تھا کہ دونوں ایوانوں کی ممبرشپ اس کمیٹی کی ہو، تاکہ وہ حقیقی معنوں میں ایک پارلیمانی کمیٹی بنے اور اپنا ایک فعال کردار جو ہے وہ ادا کر سکے. دوسری بات جو میں سمجھتا ہوں وہ یہ ہے، اور شاید اس سے کچھ دوست ناراض، لیکن میں یہ سمجھتا ہوں کہ ہمیں اب تھوڑا سا جو کیسنگ ہے اس کو تبدیل کرنا پڑے. ابھی تک ہم دنیا کو شاید صرف یہ باور کروا سکے ہیں کہ یہ پاکستان اور ہندوستان کے درمیان ایک تنازع، لہذا جو بھی بات کرتا ہے وہ اس کو صرف ایک ڈسپیوٹ بٹوین انڈیا اینڈ پاکستان دیکھتا ہے. What needs to be explained is that this is indeed a dispute between India and Pakistan, but it has a basis in international law. It has a basis where the fundamental right of self-determination is being denied and usurped by an occupying force. It needs to be emphasized that there are gross violations of fundamental rights and of international law. And the dispute between India and Pakistan comes as a consequence of these 4 or 5 ingredients. I think it is very essential. Because that is why people then begin to look in terms of their own bilateral relations. We have failed to internationalize in stricto sensu in these terms the actual issues of the struggle of the people of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And I think that needs to be done, and that needs to be done on a priority basis. ہمیں اس بات کو بھی، نمبر 3 اس بات کو بھی ہمیں پاور کرنا ہے. اور میں یہاں پہ یہ کہتا ہوں کہ یہ اس لیے میں زیادہ ایمفسائز کر رہا ہوں. چلیے میں اس پہ بعد میں آتا ہوں کیونکہ میں ایک اور لنک اس سے پہلا آتا ہوں. ہمیں اس بات کو بھی پاور کروانا ہے کہ ہندوستان ایک سوچے سمجھے منصوبے کے تحت آکیوپائڈ کشمیر کی ڈیموگرافی کو بدل رہا ہے. اگر اسرائیل فلسطین کے اندر جوئش سیٹلمنٹس بنا رہی ہے تو ہندوستان ہندو سیٹلمنٹس آکیوپائڈ کشمیر کے اندر بنا رہا ہے تاکہ وہ اس خطے کی ڈیموگرافی کو بدل سکے. کہ اگر کبھی دنیا کی کانشنس جاگے، اگر کبھی یو این کی ریزولوشنز کے ذریعے پلیبسٹ ہو سکے تو وہ اس کے اوپر اثر انداز ہو سکے اس طریقے سے. اور آپ نے یہ دیکھا جو میں نے بات کہی کہ میں بعد میں کرتا ہوں، یہاں پہ میں وہ بات کرنا چاہتا ہوں. کیا آپ نے دیکھا ایز آف لیٹ فلسطین نے جب یہ ایشو آف سیٹلمنٹس اٹھایا، لمبی جدوجہد چلی، लेकिन फिर अब हाल ही में एक ऐसा मुकाम आया कि अमेरिका जैसी रियासत ने एब्सटेन कर दिया जब सेटलमेंट्स का इशू सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के अंदर आ। हम यहां से एक पैरेलल ड्रॉ करें, हम यहां से एक और पैरेलल भी ड्रॉ करें और इन जक्सटापोजिशन प्लेस करें इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स के अंदर कश्मीर और फलस्तीन की स्ट्रगल को इकट्ठे रखा जाए ताकि दुनिया इस बात को समझे कि ये दर हकीकत एक मूवमेंट है फॉर द राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ पीपल. So there should be a linkage that we should try and develop between the struggles in Palestine, the Intifada in Palestine, and the struggle and the Intifada which is taking place in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I also believe that it is now time that, and again we should learn. आप सब जो बाहर के पार्लियामान के मेंबर्स हैं और जो यहाँ के पार्लियामान के मेंबर, उन सबको याद होगा, बिलखुसूस लॉर्ड नजीर साहब को याद होगा और लॉर्ड कुर्बान साहब को याद होगा कि किस तरह इब्तिदा के अंदर किस तरह अंग्रेजी में बात कर ही रहा था यार, बीच में थोड़ा सा मेरे ख्याल कोई ऐसा यहाँ पे नहीं है जो उनको नहीं समझता. All right. I think Lord Nazir and Lord Qurban would remember that in the early days of the Palestinian struggle, how the representatives of the PLO would be present at all international forums, in particular all international parliamentary forums, and how they would be distributing their literature and how they would be meeting individual members of parliament and delegations and putting across their point of view. I don't think it would be a bad idea if the Hurriyat Conference started to adopt that policy. The IPU is there, the CPA is there. There are so many other parliamentary forums and meetings and conferences that take place. Their delegations should be present. They should have their literature. They should have the stories of horror and pain and anguish. And they should meet the members of parliament. And they should put across their point. It's a long struggle. It's an arduous struggle. It's a painful struggle. But it's a struggle which history has proven meets with final success because it is the struggle of the people. And the struggle of the people always is crowned with success. I also believe that the young parliamentarians perhaps, and we would be willing to help them, or if they want, we can take that initiative, that we should commence a signature campaign in Pakistan and take enough signatures so that the United Nations is forced to take up the issue. I think it's also time that Pakistan's Foreign Office took up this issue in the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations. If the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations cannot act and react to the recent wave of Indian atrocities, then that forum be exposed as well. It has been now well over 150 days. And correct me, Mr. Prime Minister, if I'm wrong. That curfew continues unabated. And the world sits as a silent spectator. Indian occupation forces kill at will, as if they are gladiators in the Colosseum of Rome. And the world sits as a silent spectator. Whereas I say that yes, the world has lost its conscience. Yes, the world has become blind. But let me also not only apportion the blame on them, let me apportion some of the blame on myself as well. I have failed to sensitize the Western media. क्या ये दुरुस्त नहीं है कि अगर अमेरिका के अंदर एक बिल्ली दरख्त पे चढ़ जाती है तो सारे टीवी कैमराज उसको दिखा रहे होते हैं कि ये देखे बिल्ली वहां पे चढ़ गई है, अब ये नीचे कैसे उतरेगी, कहीं ये गिर ना जाए, कहीं ये गिरेगी तो उसकी टांग टूट जाएगी। क्रूअल्टी फॉर एनिमल्स के लिए जितनी एसोसिएशन है वो वहां पे पहुंच जाती। क्या एशियाई खून और एशियाई बच्चे एक रोई बिल्ली से भी बदतर? क्या बीबीसी सीएनएन को जो कुश्त और खून की होली ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर के अंदर खेली जा रही है, क्या उनको वो नजर नहीं आ रही? तो इस बात की अशद जरूरत है। There is a necessity that on top priority basis, the world media needs to be sensitized. They need to be shown, they need to be taken, they need to be influenced. If their conscience is sleeping, their conscience needs to be shaken up. So the fifth point was the sensitization of the Western media. The seventh point is the sensitization of the human rights organization. It appears that the human rights organizations also have turned a deaf ear. So we need to sensitize those as well. But I think I have spread enough gloom and doom for the day. But let me end on a positive note. And that positive note is that if you look at the struggles of third world countries, if you look at the struggle in Cambodia against a much mightier force than India, if you look at the struggle of the Vietnamese people against American imperialism, if you look at the struggle of the people of Cuba, if you look at third world struggles, you find that the people have the resilience, the people have the will, the people pay the price,
finally, victory belongs to the people. Thank you.
Sir, after saying the way you have said so much, after that, saying something for me, it's really tough, but it has to be done. Well, the Chair, Honorable Chairman Senate Miarazak Raban, Honorable Parliamentarians and leaders from Azad Jammu and Kashmir, respected delegates from friendly nations of UK, Canada, and European Union, distinguished panelists and speakers, my dearest Kashmiris, brothers, sisters, and an energetic youth of Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Assalamu alaikum. We reached the end of International Parliamentary Seminar on Kashmir to highlight the violations of human rights in Indian occupied Kashmir. It gives me immense pleasure to see that the world community has agreed to the document like United Nations Charter, which agreed to the documents to recognize the right of self-determination for all communities. The signing of Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a landmark event in the history of civilization. By virtue of holistic feelings inherent in us, we all are bound to agree to the principles emerged in International Convention of Territories. With such impressive territories and treaties and conventions before us, we have got a good starting point in order to see where we stand today. We have to ask ourselves what we have given to the people of Kashmiris in the face of such promises, much made under the instruments of international law. How we can justify the use of pellet guns and against defenseless people of Kashmir. What explanation international law offers for the killing of young Burhan Bani? What international humanitarian law can give to the widows and orphans of Kashmir? Let's take aside for a moment the suffering of Kashmiris. Let's make a prudent assessment of socio-economic implications of the conflict for the Pakistan and India and the region at large. Are we better off with the status quo? Can Pakistan and India and the nation of South Asia prosper as long as the conflict Kashmir continues to remain on? The answer is available in the reports of agencies like United Nations Development Programme, which paints a dismal picture of socio-economic conditions prevalent in South Asia. The two nuclear-armed South Asian powers have nothing impressive to yield in their human development reports. Worthy guests, time has come for us to distinguish between the act of terrorism committed by a nuclear-armed state backed by ever-increasing conventional military capability against unarmed, defenseless population and indigenous uprising organized by the local people to offer resistance in order to protect themselves from gross human rights violations. Ladies and gentlemen, 7 decades are more than enough to realize that the desire for freedom cannot be suppressed with illegitimate use of the force. We must not forget that there is nothing new we are supposed to craft in the course of this event. We just have to remind ourselves promises the international community has made with the people of Kashmir in the United Nations resolution. We have to see where we lag, which hinders us from implementing those resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, I express my gratitude to convention of organization which includes National Assembly of Pakistan, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pakistan Institute for Parliamentarian Services and Young Parliamentarian Affairs. A significant part of organization of the seminars was carried out by the Pakistan Institute for Parliamentarian Services, PIPS, Islamabad. I am indebted to their entire team, including dynamic PIPS young parliamentarian, the associate subject expressed by these, who worked day and night. And then I greatly appreciate the support we received from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Jammu Kashmir and Pakistan, and the Fatma Private Limited, and last but not least, Raja Najabat and Hina Malik. And especially I want to thank one person. We appreciate the untitled zeal of our dear friend in making this biggest international parliamentarian seminar on Kashmir great success, none other than Mr. Nafeez Zakria. I'm really grateful to the Chief Guest, Honorable Chairman, Senate of Pakistan, Senator Mia Raja Rabbani, Mr. and Mrs. and ambassadors and representatives of social society, civil society, and all the speakers and panel members. Their presence has been made invaluable and without any doubt has helped make this event great. And at the end, I would recite that Pakistan has always and will continue to provide the diplomatic, political, and moral support to the cause of Kashmiri people and resolution of dispute according to the wishes of Kashmiris. I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Azadi Kashmir Zindabad, Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you. Two more minutes. I just take 2 more minutes. Last but not least, I would like to just take a few names to thank everyone who's been a part of this conference. First of all, our friends from media. Everyone has cooperated very well. The coverage has been excellent throughout these 2 days. So I would really like to thank our friends from the Pakistani as well as international media. Secondly, I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Veena Raj, who's been here throughout, but I've been listening or present. She's really has been the backbone of this conference to make it successful. I would also like to thank the team of PIPS, which includes Mr. Zaka, who's the Director Research, Mishai Mazhar, Waqas, I'm going to apologize for the people I missed, Waqas, the security team, the protocol team, who have really been awake for days now to ensure that everything goes in order. Thank you very much, and we really appreciate your efforts. The Ministry of Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan, the Honorable Minister, was the first person who agreed to help and cooperate and coordinate this conference. I would also like to thank him in his absence. His ministry has been very, very popular. Ministry of Foreign Affairs has also, including the advisor to the Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sartaj Aziz, Mr. Nafeez Zakria, who has been working with us for the last 7 months now to coordinate this. We really, really appreciate all your efforts and coordination with the Parliament. My parliamentarian colleagues who attended this conference throughout, their support has been unwavering to the Young Parliamentarians Forum. I would like to appreciate your time and presence. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the delegates, panelists, chairpersons of all our panels, the opening and the closing, for taking our time. We know you're busy people, to come here for this issue which is really vital for Pakistan. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, the youth, the students who attended this conference. Thank you very much. Pakistan Zindabad. Honorable Chairman Senate and the international delegates, we'd like to have a...
requested to please join us on the lunch while we join the parliamentarians will join 5 minutes.
Second Stop. Stop.